Business Summit, like the previous three gatherings, brings together the best and the brightest from India and overseas, both shortly on stage and in the audience right now. The summit, like in the past, will be addressed by the leader of the world's largest democracy and what will hopefully soon be the fastest growing economy, Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself. Besides the showstopper, as in the first three editions of the GBS, we will once again witness a confluence of eminent world and industry stalwarts who share a great narrative to catalyze the global economy. The summit seeks to actively engage thought leaders and business stalwarts to positively transform and aid global as well as Indian growth. Global Business Summit clearly is a must-attend for those who matter and for those who want to be counted. I will, on behalf of the Times Group, the organizers, and the sponsors, take this opportunity to thank each one of our eminent speakers and participants for their valuable time and insight, which we shall witness over the course of the next 2 days. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where disruption is clearly the new normal. What worked in the past won't anymore. The rules of the game are fast changing, they have changed, and will continue to evolve even more rapidly going ahead. And that's precisely why GBS 2018 is aptly themed New Economy, New Rules. I would at this stage now like to welcome on stage Mr. Raj Jain, CEO Bennett Coleman & Company, who shall deliver this evening's welcome address. Mr. Jain.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth edition of the Economic Times Global Business Summit. In 3 years of its existence, GBS has established itself as a significant forum for exchange of ideas between national and global policymakers, business leaders, and opinion makers. This year, with a stellar cast of thought leaders, this forum will enable further discussion and debate on some of the most pressing issues that confront the world and business and society at large. As rapid advances in technology alter the way work and play is done across the world, businesses are being challenged by the need to innovate while being sustainable and ethical. This evening and through tomorrow, you will hear from some of the most inspirational leaders on how they are combating and winning in the face of such challenges. In his previous address at the GBS, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi had laid down the direction for future reforms of our country. Speaking at this forum in 2016, he reiterated his goal of reform to transform India, resulting in us being the world's fastest growing large economy. He set the goal for India to grow to a $2 trillion economy, but cautioned that our country's contribution to the world must go beyond economic growth alone. Ladies and gentlemen, later this evening, you will hear once again from the Prime Minister as he takes stage to address this gathering. In closing, on behalf of Economic Times and the Times Group and the entire team, I'd like to thank our sponsors, our various speakers and panelists for traveling across the length and breadth of the globe to be a part of the 2018 Economic Times Global Business Summit. We all look forward to great discussions on thoughts and ideas which will help shape the future of India and the world at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Jain, for that welcome address. I'd now like to welcome on stage Mr. Rana Kapoor, MD and CEO, Yes Bank, and Chairman, Yes Global Institute, who shall deliver the summit's opening address. Mr. Kapoor.
Good evening, everyone. It's a wonderful evening, and Totally delighted to be here, and Raj, thanks for the introductory comments. This is a very special privilege for Yes Bank to be associated with the Economic Times Global Business Summit. This is the second year in a row that we have been involved, but this time around I think is extra special, and I don't wish to talk about what happened last year. The fact is that the GBS, as we understand, is about a new economic order. It's about how to change the paradigm and how to build and really combine knowledge with growth opportunities, and the platform and the speakers in a way represent this terrific opportunity. I think these platforms also provide an opportunity to really design, innovate, create, and really enterprise. So I'm deeply convinced that the forum, which is commenced now and will go on till tomorrow evening, is about a platform of collective intelligence. It's about wisdom and a very powerful tool for new age development. I also take this opportunity to thank Vineet Jain and his leadership team. He is very, very convincing to help to convince me to spend so much money on this sponsorship. But he's got a fantastic team as well, and I'm sure we will all be super impressed by the extremely impressive galaxy of speakers, global and otherwise, who have been mobilized for this outstanding event, because when you see the itinerary, it's really very scintillating. We also know that what's happening over the next 1.5 days, when you look at the itinerary in some depth, is a stellar participation of Indian and international ministers, policy makers, over 100 international leaders, 500 CEOs, and I would like to believe somewhere close to about 2,000 delegates who have really aggregated today and tomorrow to be able to imbibe what's happening to this changing India, the new India, and everybody is looking forward to, naturally, the Prime Minister's address, which is around the corner, on new economy and new rules. Last month, some of us heard what was stated in Davos. And I think this one statement made by Klaus Schwab, the founder of World Economic Forum, about the image of India being of optimism and promise. It's a simple statement, an image of optimism and promise. To me, kind of resonated, and I like to believe that after what Prime Minister said in his opening plenary at 11 a.m. in the morning of Tuesday, 23rd of January, was India means business. Honestly, it was about India means business. So I think that message is now cascading into this event, the Global Business Summit, which in a way is a subset of a very specific Davos kind of an event being conducted in Delhi and being led by the Times Group under the leadership of Mr. Vineet Jain. We all know, ladies and gentlemen, that India's economic and growth story is now a global phenomenon. And we have seen some breaks in our overall growth, some speed breakers, because we have taken on some stratospheric changes in terms of reforms, which were not bold enough in the past, but reforms that have made tectonic shifts in India's economy, and maybe they put some speed breakers in terms of GST, demonetization, insolvency, bankruptcy code. There are a bunch of them, and which, to me and many others, as a banker, I'm also an analyst, will create multipliers. These will create growth impulses in course of time when the dust settles. When the dust settles, these are going to be very, very promising changes despite the ripple effect and despite the turbulence in the very short term impacting our economy. I think we have a very good discussion coming up. there is a discussion on India's very compelling case to be a 5 trillion GDP economy. I think that's possible. It's easy to happen. We are at 2.23 trillion last fiscal year. I'm very convinced that by 2025, it can be very easily tapped, depending on exchange rates, but very easily at about 5 trillion. And that requires a growth rate, a CAGR of only 10%. At nominal rates, please remember nominal rates are very different from real rates because India's economy has a, let's say, give or take, a permanent inflation factor incorporated in macroeconomic policy of about 4% or so. So in a way, we are looking at an economy which is 5 trillion by 2025, and I'm deeply convinced, which is also a subject of a dialogue in a panel forthcoming very soon, that, can India be a 10 trillion economy by 2030? That is even easier because by 2030, we'll just be catching up with where China is. China is already at 11 trillion. So by 2030, I don't think we are being too ambitious, but naturally we have to put our pedal and our pace on the accelerator. I think India's very, disruptive reforms which have happened over the last 1.5 to 2 years, which have created domestic uncertainty, but global goodwill, but global resonance, whether it's GST, unifying 29 states and unifying, our 7 union territories, our ability to build GST architecture surrounding that, the insolvency bankruptcy code, which in a way rendered, 40, 50 years of the skeletons in the system into a very archaic. They literally demolished all the past and have created a refreshed and a brand new platform for resolution of problems so that there's accountability and responsibility with owners and their managers. To me, this is a very, very bold step. Like they say, be bold, go for gold. I'm very convinced that New India has to have new rules, right? And that is the subject of the Honorable Prime Minister's presentation coming up. And I'm sure the new rules are going to change something very permanently in this country, is our bad habits. About behavior change at an individual level and a behavior change at a corporate level. So I'm very convinced that what is happening is a genetic change in Indians after 70 years of our economy. Some people don't like to listen to this, but as a banker, I'm very deeply convinced that genetically we have to modify ourselves going forward and change our behavior into believing the future India is going to be delivered by our latent intelligence and not past, let's say, bad practices. So the demographic dividend, which yet, I'm not fully convinced, yet needs to be invested in skilling India, because skilling India is still like a moving target, and that is something which requires rank 1 priority, because the demographic advantage, 400 million boys and girls who are millennials, but we have to skill them and we have to train them, we have to make sure they're part of the design, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship economy. So that to me is a very compelling reason to believe that Skill India is a good program, as a startup India, as a digital India, and all those other fiscal disciplines that we need. But in addition to that, in the short, medium term, we also need the consumption and the investment cycle to start moving. Because that is, what I call the short-term gains and the medium-term gains, which are warranted in the economy to get our GDP moving in the right direction. Because a lot of our programs are long-term, so when we adjust our growth ideas into short and medium-term objectives, I like to believe that consumption which is very latent and everlasting in this country, but the capital formation and investment formation in our country needs to be pressed on and with top speed. Along with that, India's advantage today, and which is also subject to discussion between most of the subjects tomorrow, apart from media and entertainment, is actually how to really build frugal technologies. To me, the tech-focused, frugal technologies where India has built the India stack, the public stack, and creating offshoots around that is going to be India's competitive and comparative advantage. I'm convinced, maybe in 2, 3, 4 years' time or sooner than later, that India will rank #1. India will be better than America, better than China when it comes to frugal innovation. I'm very convinced on this very virtuous cycle that we have got into, and I think on the back of that, we have a very frugal system. It's been proven in the motorcycle business by the Munjal family. It's been proven time and again by India's ability to build frugal systems when given a fantastic opportunity. And my friend Pawan will only stand up and say that there are 18 million two-wheelers developed in India, so we can do manufacturing, we can do many other things. And to me, this is a mindset and a mindshare change which is around the corner in our country. GBS, ladies and gentlemen, is a great aggregation, great congregation of very good minds. You know, it's terrific in terms of the repertoire, which is coming up later today and all of tomorrow. I think that these minds who are meeting together can definitely educate, definitely inspire, definitely elevate, definitely empower. And please, let's maximize the time together for the next 1.5 days. I wish ETGBS success and welcome to all of you again as a co-host with Vineet Jain for the next 1.5 days. And I compliment Vineet and his team to put this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapoor, for that opening address of the summit and for your endeavor and support all through GBS 2018. Let's turn focus and talk about India that took 60 years to get to a GDP figure of $1 trillion, but only 7 to reach the next mark of $2 trillion. My next speaker believes becoming a $10 trillion economy is now within India's planning horizons. It's time to call on stage Mr. Dominic Barton, Global Managing Partner, McKinsey & Company, who will share his views on India capturing the next wave of growth. Mr. Barton.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here again, and I want to thank the Economic Times, too, for pulling off just magnificent sessions. It's a place where I can actually meet more global leaders here than many other different parts of the world. And what I wanted to do just over this next 15 minutes was try and help actually just give a bit of the context for what I think is the great topic that the Times and Rana, you've put together, which is the whole notion of the new economy and new rules. And the basic point that I want to make is that this is a time of phenomenal change. And for me personally, this is literally the last few days in my role. I've been doing this role for 9 years. And when I started this role, my view was you can't lead unless you have a sense of context. And the themes I thought that were changing the world have actually not changed over the last 9 years, the fundamental forces. But what's happened is they've intensified at a level that I couldn't imagine. And I want to walk through some of those because I think that's what's leading to a need for a new set of rules as we look ahead. And secondly, I think that while we're going through this time of phenomenal change and disruption, I'm an optimist. I think there's going to be a lot of new jobs, new businesses, innovation that's going to be required. Innovation will be critical, but inclusion will be as important as innovation. And in fact, we're going to have to do more invention on the inclusion than we've ever done before. And my final point will be is I think if there is any country that can show us how to do this, because it's going to be a phenomenal task to do it, it's India. And so I do believe that I can see $10 trillion on the planning horizon. I don't know whether it's 2030 or 2040, but the momentum's there. What I actually think is more exciting is the innovation that we're going to see in how we do business and how we do social sector. Because of the size and scale of where India is, it has to be done that way, and that's going to be good for the world. So that's basically the message that I want to go through. So let me talk a little bit about the global context. I mentioned before, I always think about what are the forces at work that you have to think about, and I think about more of the gravitational forces versus the volatility that we've seen over the last 9 years. And I think that there are 4 that are driving the world into a period of extraordinary disruption. The first, and again, India is very much in the center of all of these. The first is this massive economic power shift towards Asia. Clearly, India is right in the middle of that. But many people in the world underestimate the speed with which that change is going on. And one way I look at it is if you were to put the Earth on a flat piece of paper and try and balance it, right, as to where the center of gravity is in the GDP, in the year 0, it was actually roughly early. That's because of the significance of the Asian economy back in the year 0. It wasn't as large, obviously, as it was today, but it was significant. If you then look forward to about 1975, it moved to Iceland. The sort of the gravity as North America and Europe came into the system. Still a strong weight from Asia. So it basically took 2,000 years to move towards Iceland. In the next 50 years, it's going to move back exactly to where it started in the year 0, but with a much more significant economy. So the scale of that transition, because it's a much more massive economy than it ever has been, and the speed is unprecedented. It's about 1,000 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution. So the future is now, and it's here. It's in this part of the world. And if there's only one number that you remember from what I say in my blathering up here, is just the following. There is going to be 2.4 billion new middle-class consumers coming into the world in the next 15 years, right up to 2030. 2 billion of those will be coming from this region, and the vast bulk will be coming from this country and where it is. This is a massive opportunity that we need to look at. And again, most of us in the West are underappreciating the speed and scale of that, and that has just continued to move, and it's urbanization that is driving that. The second force, which I actually think is accelerated even further over these 9 years, and I'm both excited and frightened by it, is technology. Technology is just moving at a pace we've never seen. I think we're in chapter 1 of a 100-chapter book, but if you think about what computing power has done, what the connectedness of things and people has done, and what big data has done, it is completely transforming everything. Everyone needs to think of themselves as a technology company. If I even think about the Catholic Church, the Pope has decided to establish an ethics committee on artificial intelligence. And I'm not a deep reader of the Bible. I don't think anything was written about artificial intelligence in the Catholic Church. But if you want to lead an organization, even if you're a religious organization, you better embrace technology in where it is. So every single one of us has to think about how it's transforming us. And the biggest implication for me of technology is speed. Every organization has to think about clock speed. How fast is the world moving, because it's disrupting all of us. And it's not just in mobile commerce. It's in energy storage, it's in material science, it's in every single aspect. We're now seeing technology being applied to science, to medicine. We're getting big changes on that side. So this is going to lead to very significant changes in the world. The third, which may be a weird thing to talk about here in India, but it's a global phenomenon, is the aging of the Earth. We are becoming a very old planet. We're going to have more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 14 in about 20 years from now, except in this country where you have this demographic dividend, and I think we should never underestimate that asset that was. We have to skill the group and make sure that they have jobs, but people are going to be crying not to have young talent. So let's make sure we use it. Japan has gone off the edge on that side. I come from Canada. It's the next fastest aging OECD country in the world. And what that means for a country like Canada is that our GDP growth rate is going to be cut in half just because of demographics. Doing nothing means we're going to have a lower drop. It's just the way it works, and it's a fundamental issue. And older people cost more money. Again, as I get older, I'm happy that we have more older people. I think wisdom and so forth is important, but old people cost more money in the systems, and that's going to require fundamental changes to healthcare that we've never seen before, how we work, lifelong learning. There's no way that we can retire at 65 anymore down the road in the future. This is going to change some basic conventions of how we work. So that's the third force that's there. And the fourth one, which is one that I want to talk about in terms of inclusion, is that with all of these changes that are going on, there is a search or yearning for a new societal deal. Because some people, a few people, are gaining from these changes that I've just talked about, but there's a lot of people that are not. And the challenge with that is that the people who are not gaining and not being able to participate are getting ticked off and upset, and they have visibility. And we know, for example, that 500 million people over the period of 2002 to 2017 saw a decrease in their actual household incomes as we move through it. And that causes concern. And technology is an increasing returns to scale game. Fewer people get more of the benefit as you go through it. And that's going to challenge us on some of the orthodoxies about how we think about distribution of wealth and how that moves through the system, because you can't keep assuming the same system is going to work unless you want to see a revolution occur. So everyone has to be thinking about where that is. We have automation, which is coming in faster than we think. We think that in most countries around the world, we're going to see at least 10% of the workforce have to have a completely new job in the next 10 years. Their job will be eliminated through automation. And I'm not a Luddite. Automation can help do many things. We've got, I think, many more future jobs than we have past jobs. The problem is you have to skill them, as Rana said before. If we don't skill people and reskill people, we're going to have a big problem, and it's moving faster than we've seen. And in previous technology disruptions, we had multiple generations to absorb the technology shift. This is going to happen in one generation as we move through it. And then we have the increasing geopolitical stability, and KPMG and Bill Thomas can talk. They've done a very good report on that, but I've never seen so much geopolitical stability. As was mentioned in Davos, I think the feeling was growth, 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 incredible bullishness, but at the same time, fragility like we've not seen before, and we go through it. So that's the context of what we're dealing with, which is a very turbulent, disruptive world. I'm an optimist. I think there are many, many opportunities. But if we don't begin to think about how we do things differently as organizations and as businesses, if I might point out the businesses in society, we're going to have a revolution as we move through it. And one of the people I read a lot, and you may think I'm bizarre when I say that, and some of you have probably heard of this fellow, E.O. Wilson, who wrote a book called The Social Conquest of Earth. E.O. Wilson's an entomologist, which means he studies ants. You'll say, well, why are you reading about someone who studies ants? Well, E.O. Wilson, his real passion is actually studying species that have been dominant over long, long periods of times in world history. And there are 4 species that have been dominant: ants, termites, bees, and humans. And the distinguishing feature of those species that are dominant over time is they're altruistic to each other, and they're intergenerational in what they do. I'm simplifying for an idiot like me to understand it, but that's why this fellow who studies ants has actually got some pretty profound views about where we are. And we're assuming that the current system that we have is going to work, and I'm suggesting to you it's not, because of the technology shifts that are going on, the disruptive shifts. And if we don't embrace the change and the people that are disrupted, then maybe we won't be moving through the system. And he had one quote, which I love, which is, you know, we have created a Star Wars civilization with Stone Age emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology, right? It's that sort of combination of where it is. And that's why we need to have innovation, and we need to have inclusiveness as we look ahead. And some of the areas that I worry about from the ant point of view, if I could say it, is we're becoming increasingly short-term. Many governments are just trying to get re-elected in a cycle when many of these changes take a long period. We're seeing the advent of quarterly capitalism as opposed to long-term capitalism, where people are focused on the quarter and not thinking about what they're building over time. We have more political gridlock in other parts of the world. We have declining voter turnout. There's a problem with the system that we're going to have to work on, and we need to fix it. It's not going to be fixed outside the system of where we are. And so let me just finish off then talking about India, because I'm bullish about us being able to do it, because I think India is right in the crosshairs of all of those issues. It, by definition, India is significant. This is a sixth of the world's population that is here, right? The changes that are going to happen here, I think, can show us in the rest of the world how we move forward and what we do. And a couple of areas I just want to point out. There are things like infrastructure and resource effectiveness with energy and so forth. But I think two of the most fundamental areas of change are actually going to be on the reskilling area. We have to figure this out, given the demographic advantage that we have. And that means we're going to have to rethink how we do education. Why does it take 16 years to make a doctor? Why? Who said that that has to be the rule of how it works? Who says you have to spend 2 years doing an MBA? Who says you have to have a university degree to join a firm like ours? Why is that a rule? Why do we put kids in school behind a desk for 16 years and assume that that's the way we work it? I keep a picture in my New York office of the first kindergarten, which was in 1882. Bismarck invented the kindergarten in Germany because he was worried about a technological change. That was moving people from agriculture into industry. So they came up with kindergartens. If you look at the kindergarten from that period of time, well over 150 years ago, and compare it to what an average kindergarten looks like in Manhattan, the only difference you see is one has carbon fiber desks and the other has wooden desks. And that's, to me, we have to rethink how we're going to educate. And I think I'm excited by the prospect here in what we do, because that will be the way it is. And we're going to have to think about lifelong learning. It won't be we stuff all our education into the first 25 years of our life. This is going to be an ongoing capability that we're going to need to be able to have. The second area is the frugal innovation that Rana, you mentioned. When I think about healthcare and what needs to be done, I think the solution to the healthcare problems that we have in the West will be solved here. We're going to learn how to do it here, and then we're going to export that back into the other parts of the world. It's going to happen. Just given the scale and the innovation, the technology, and the chance to challenge orthodoxies, we're going to see innovation at a scale that we have never seen before. And finally, I just think there's this notion again about, with disruption, with the average clock speed of the world going up, with the average lifetime of an S&P 500 company going from 90 years to 15 years, all of us are going to have to be comfortable challenging our basic orthodoxies, all of them except our values. Every single one of those orthodoxies needs to be challenged. And this is a country that has the history, it has the leadership, it has the leaders to be able to lead us in how we do this fundamental transformation that we're all going to need to do over the next 15 years. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Barton, for that rather insightful perspective. And like in your own words, the only way India can capture the next wave of growth, perhaps, is by keeping our Stone Age emotions intact, embracing godlike technology, and reforming some of our medieval institutions. So thanks very much for that. I'd now like to turn focus and talk to us about what is really now being called new globalization. With many countries becoming increasingly insular, how will global trade be impacted? And if this is here to stay, how does one adapt to new globalization? It's my pleasure to call on stage William B. Thomas, Chairman KPMG International, to speak on this very, very important topic of adapting to new globalization. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor for me to be here today, and I'm deeply appreciative to the Economic Times for the invite. You know, I'm honored for the opportunity to speak to you today, to share my thoughts and my excitement on the development of the Indian economy, its integration with the increasingly digital economy. You know, as an auditor, and in the interests of transparency, I should start by making a short declaration. India is a country that I hold in the highest regard. I've visited many, many times over the years, and I have a deep, deep affection for the country. As a Canadian, and this is obviously the Canadian portion of the segment, as a Canadian and having led KPMG Canada for over a decade before taking on my current role, I know firsthand about the strength and the vitality of the relationships between our people, as well as the bilateral trade and governmental relationships between our two countries. And India is deeply important to KPMG. The KPMG India celebrates its 25th anniversary this year. It's an exceptional practice, and in Arun Kumar, the firm has one of our most senior and most experienced global leaders. Our Indian firm, like so many other Indian businesses, is increasingly acting as a global hub for technology and innovation across the KPMG network. A great example of India taking a leading role in my own business is the fact that our global head of cybersecurity is Indian and based in Delhi. And I'm immensely proud of the work that my colleagues in India are involved with, in the public as well as the private sector here. We've been working with many Indian states to help them create a path towards creating universal health coverage. And I sincerely hope that we can play a constructive role in helping India deliver on the new National Health Protection Scheme announced in the budget at the beginning of this month. You know, these major improvements to healthcare in India are exciting and a vital step as the country fulfills its economic potential. But having said that I have a deep affection for India, I will still endeavor to bring the objectivity to my comments that you would rightly expect. About a month ago, almost to the day, I was fortunate enough to be in Davos to hear Prime Minister Modi speak at the World Economic Forum. And it was truly an historic occasion. And I'll tell you that his speech, it sent a very powerful message to CEOs from around the world, as well as the political leaders from many, many nations. Prime Minister Modi, he spoke passionately in Davos about the benefits, nationally and internationally, of globalization. And I can tell you that his speech, it very much set the tone for so many of the discussions that I had in Davos with CEOs from our major clients around the world. And the Prime Minister's comments, they struck a chord that echoed throughout the week. The Prime Minister rightly expressed the concern that globalization is losing its luster. You know, as a result of more inward-looking and insular policies, and I actually agree with him that the downside risks of such isolationism are no less significant than climate change and terrorism. Globalization has enabled huge progress throughout the world, reducing poverty, growing the middle class, opening up new opportunities through greater trade and spreading innovation. Indeed, India has been a beneficiary of globalization since its economic reform process started 25 years ago. But what we've also experienced, and a big part of the discussion in Davos, was that globalization is far from perfect. Growth has not always been inclusive. And widening inequality is a justifiable cause for concern. But the answer is in making globalization more inclusive, making it work better in a fairer way for more people. There are a number of things that can help do this, and they're the things that I know are very much top of mind here in India. In his speech, Prime Minister Modi also made a powerful case that India is open for business, saying that the red tape that used to stymie business in India is being replaced by a red carpet, welcoming enterprise. And that comment really struck. It struck home not just because it was the right message for global leaders, but because those of us who visit India and do business here, we know that the reality is on the way to matching the rhetoric. And to an extent, that message about India transforming into a much more pro-market, pro-business environment should not, indeed did not, come as a huge surprise. FDI is at all-time record levels. The overhaul of India's corporate law and business environment is delivering noticeable improvements. India's dramatic rise up the World Bank's ease of doing business league table is capturing headlines and certainly the attention of the CEOs that I have the privilege of speaking with. Indian economic reforms have been delivering and developing momentum and credibility with international business, certainly over recent years. But for all of you who've been there, Davos is one of those few places, those few moments in the year when the world listens. And it's possible to capture global attention, to reset the dial on expectations. And Prime Minister Modi's speech did just that for India. You know, I compared it in numerous media interviews and in client conversations that I've had since with the speech that President Xi gave in Davos last year. Both President Xi, Prime Minister Modi, had an electrifying effect on all of us in the hall and a profound impact on those watching outside. So I'd like to spend a few minutes that I have today on, giving you my thoughts on India's economic reforms and why I believe that India's economic success matters so much, not only for India, but for the wider world. And the great news is that the economy is starting to respond to the landmark reforms that have been made. The Indian economy is now projected to grow 7.4% in 2018 by the IMF, and for India once again to become the world's fastest growing major economy. I'll start with my own firm, KPMG, which survives and thrives by serving other businesses. We're in many ways a barometer for broader economic health and broader progress. Over the 25 years since KPMG was founded, we've grown significantly. For most of the last decade, we've posted double-digit growth, and we now have over 20,000 people working here, serving several thousand Indian businesses. But while those headline numbers have been strong, the reality is that our clients and our own business have struggled to reach their full potential. We face levels of complexity, levels of bureaucracy that have hampered India's economic progress. And I'll highlight just three aspects: tax, infrastructure, and the digital economy. First, tax. Complex federal and state regulations and tax regimes, they've created friction and inefficiency within the economy. And that friction has been a drag on Indian economic growth. Outdated and poor infrastructure has been another historic overhang and a drag on growth. In many ways, India's infrastructure challenge has been the physical manifestation of the complex web of national and state responsibilities. Moving people and goods in India was simply too difficult, and the limitations of the transport network has certainly and undoubtedly slowed the pace. The 2018 budget calls for a massive increase in infrastructure investment, and the need will just get greater. It's estimated that the infrastructure needs and require investment of $4.5 trillion by 2040. And with projected spending of $3.9 trillion, there's a potential $500 million opportunity that still exists there. And finally, the digital economy. You know, in this digital age, this historic fragmentation and lack of alignment between the national and state governments has slowed India's vital investment in the digital infrastructure that will enable much of the next phase of India's economic development. So what are the solutions? You know, the government's commitment to minimum government and maximum governance certainly is significant. Creating a simpler, unified national tax regime in the form of the GST has been a vital step forward. And I will tell you that some global business leaders were skeptical as to whether or not India could follow through on the GST. But India has delivered the biggest tax reform in the country's history, and in fact, one of the largest such reforms the world has ever seen. The importance of making India one country, one market, eliminating multiple layers of complexity, taxation, and cost, that cannot be underestimated, and it's certainly the benefits will be felt not just in the tax take, but also in the stimulus that this reform provides to the underlying economy in the years to come. It reduces uncertainty for international business and has the double benefit of reducing compliance costs for business in the long run and improving the tax take for government. The huge investments being made in India's ports and transport infrastructure are also paying dividends. Opening up investment in India's road building program to FDI, it sends a powerful message to the international business community and certainly accelerates the development of the quality of the road network needed for India to reach its economic ambitions. And the combined effects of a progressive liberalization of the telco sector and the support for India's homegrown digital enterprises means that the government's stated ambition of a US $1 trillion digital economy, that's realistic. You know, all of these reforms would be important at any stage of India's economic development, but I believe that the fact that India is liberalizing its economy and liberating its entrepreneurial spirit at this point in time, I think is one of the most, is of incredible importance. And I say that because I believe the next few years, the first decade of the fourth industrial revolution, that will be the most transformational since the 19th century and the seismic global upheaval that we saw as a result of the first industrial revolution. Every economy, every sector, and every business, as Dominic said, is being transformed by technology. We're witnessing convergence, disruption, and the creation of whole new sectors at a pace that we've never seen before. And India is well placed to prosper in this digital revolution. India has a young population, a growing middle class, a tradition of science, technology, and engineering excellence, combined with a thirst for digital innovation. Every business leader that I speak with shares my view that India has an incredibly deep pool of technology talent. And Indian CEOs are ambitious and they're forward-looking. You know, each year we conduct an in-depth survey with over 1,300 CEOs from around the world to learn about their strategic challenges and their ambitions. And these CEOs, they lead some of the world's largest, most complex, and most successful businesses. And we spoke to over 130 Indian CEOs, and the results are very striking. Indian CEOs are embracing that disruption. They're seizing the opportunities that it offers. They're making bold investments in technology and people to drive the next stage of their growth. And they're more open to new alliances and collaboration to find complementary skills and geographic footprints. And Indian CEOs are also disrupting themselves. They're actively learning new skills to equip them and their business to succeed in the new era. So put simply, India has the right conditions and the right ambition to truly become a global economic powerhouse. And digitizing the Indian economy will not only improve the efficiency of doing business, but it will help bring more of the Indian economy within the ambit of the tax authorities as well. But one strand of the current reform agenda, frankly, excites me more than the others, and as an accountant, it is in tax reform. Startup India, and the ambition to nurture Indian technology businesses to stand and succeed on the world stage, that's tremendously exciting. With Indian technology talent supported by the digital infrastructure and a pro-startup business environment open to foreign VC investment, there's a real chance for the birth and the growth of a true Indian tech giant. We all know that that progress is never linear. And for each tech unicorn, there are numerous failures. And if we learn anything from the success in Silicon Valley, it has to be that there's a willingness to recognize the rate of failure in tech startups is higher than any other traditional business, and certainly beyond what our traditional risk appetite would comfortably accept. But the scale of the tech startups in India, the tech talent available, and the growing investment pool certainly gives me confidence that India is very capable of developing a true tech giant in the next few years. India's growth rate of 7% this year will be the envy of just about every other major economy. But I also recognize that it might not satisfy every stakeholder in India. In a country this large, this complex, and this diverse, I doubt that any reform agenda could ever meet that benchmark of universal acclaim. But India has started down a path, a bold and an optimistic path. It signaled a determination to build a strong economy that works within and contributes to the global economic framework. And that determination and the progress being made towards India's ambitions is recognized by the business and political leaders that I meet wherever I travel all over the world. The Indian economic reforms that we witness are bold and transformative, and this is truly a paradigm shift. The rest of the world is rightly having to reevaluate India and to recalibrate for an India that's ready to take its seat at the top table for global business. I'm hugely excited by what I see in front of me and determined that KPMG will do every single thing that we can do to support making India as successful as every one of us in this room want it to be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Bill Thomas, and you're absolutely right. There are big risks to being isolated. We do hope India prepares to lead the world in what will be new globalization. Now, in November last year, in an interview with us, Satya Nadella told me that the latest course he had signed up for on Coursera was deep learning. I wasn't surprised. It's a highly recommended specialization to break into artificial intelligence. For a world that needs constant upskilling, retraining, and even reskilling that has been spoken about right here, education is clearly just a click away. From the most influential CEOs to a fresh grad, there's something in it for everyone, and it's just a click away. Please join me in welcoming the man who is out to change the way we learn, Mr. Jeff Maggioncalda, CEO Coursera, on changing education one click at a time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor to share the stage with thought leaders and visionaries who I admire and respect. So I'd like to start by just thanking the Economic Times and Yes Bank for the opportunity. My trip to India this week has included visits to Mumbai and Bangalore and Delhi, and I'm continually struck by the vitality and the humanity which has always been the essence of India. And with our team in Delhi and India being our second largest market at Coursera, I feel very closely connected to the country. Coursera is a global platform, and we're dedicated to transforming lives through learning. We bring together 30 million individuals who come to Coursera to learn and to thrive. Over 150 of the top universities in the world, including Stanford and Duke and Harvard, Yale, Princeton, who partner with us to teach the world, and now over 900 companies and governments who work with Coursera to transform their talent in times of unprecedented change. And this gives us a pretty unique perspective on the trends that are shaping the way that jobs and skills and education might form and going forward. And I'm honored to share some of those thoughts with you today. The future of work and the future of learning are converging. And they're converging because the world is changing so quickly due to globalization and technology. Data, artificial intelligence, automation, and social media are having a profound and accelerating impact on our lives. And these forces are changing the way we operate in business, they're changing the nature of jobs, and they're changing the skills that are needed to do those jobs. Now, the bad news is that this kind of change is going to create major dislocations for many people, and many jobs will be lost. In order to stay relevant in a changing economy, people will have to continue to learn and continue to upskill. And they're going to have to do this not once, but for the rest of their lives. Now, the good news is that this creates unprecedented opportunity for millions of people who never had these kinds of opportunities. And because of technology, the best education in the world is now available to everyone in the world. And that's true today, right now. And this opens up an unprecedented opportunity for India. As Prime Minister Modi noted at the NASSCOM conference on Monday, India now has the opportunity to become an advanced knowledge economy and to lead the way in jobs and skills associated with everything digital, from 3D printing to cloud computing. And I believe that the key to realizing this vision is innovating in education. But before we discuss how India might innovate in education in the future, let's go back 40 years and look at how India has innovated in the past. You see, one of the earliest experiments in using technology to create equal access to education happened right here in India. The India Space Research Organization, or ISRO, was relatively young at the time. In the early 70s, they were scoping out the potential to use satellites to help educate the population of India. And in 1975, they launched the Satellite Instructional Television Experiment, or SITE, which was hailed as one of the greatest sociological experiments of all time. They shot a satellite into the sky, and they beamed down instructional television to 2,400 villages across India. And remember, this was 40 years ago, when they didn't have electricity in many of these villages, let alone televisions. So they put in televisions and solar panels and batteries. In the first year, the program benefited around 200,000 students and 50,000 primary school science teachers. 43 years later, India is on the fast track to become a digital economy, but it faces a similar challenge. How do you scale high-quality education across a country so broad and diverse and create, in the meanwhile, an equal opportunity for all? As we've heard already tonight, India's current demographics present both a great opportunity and a great challenge. India today sits on an untapped gold mine in its talent. While the rest of the world is aging, India will be the youngest country by 2020, with an average age of just 29 years old. And by 2030, we'll have the largest working-age population in the world, with over 950 million people. India's incredible demographic dividend, this young population, makes it the envy of the world. And this potential is waiting to be realized in a new world economy, where there's a tremendous shortage of skilled labor. The Manpower Group found that 40% of employers globally are finding it difficult to fill positions. And the gap between the rate of acceleration in technology and the rate of upskilling is actually increasing. Our enterprise customers in India tell us that this is a very real problem, and it's not just limited to finding new talent. Most Indian companies are seeing the skills gap widen within their own organizations, and we see this across all sectors, from IT to telecom to financial services to professional services. Technology is making many traditional skills less valuable and often obsolete. And the impact of technology on jobs will be more severe in some countries than others, particularly in India. McKinsey research shows that 51% of work activities in India could be automated using today's technology. And this is higher than every other major economy that they studied other than Japan. And it's happening at a time when over 10 million people in India are entering the job market every year. Now, technology will destroy some jobs, and it will create new jobs. And whether the balance favors job creation or job destruction really depends on India's ability to upskill its young workforce. India's demographic dividend could turn into a demographic disaster unless it can scale access to education and accelerate skills development throughout the country. With a population of 1.3 billion, the stakes are quite high indeed. The current spend on higher education in India is less than 1.5% of GDP, and this trails most developed countries. With many competing priorities for funding, delivery of education will require a new access paradigm that is cost-effective and well-suited to India's diversity. I'm reminded of India's telecom success story, where the country leapfrogged from landlines to mobile phones, and in the process transformed the lives of millions and the Indian economy. This new inflection point in education could afford a similar opportunity to drive India's economy. If India can leapfrog by delivering higher education online, it could be a game changer for young Indians and also for India's economy. And based on what we're seeing at Coursera, this is entirely feasible. New economy, new rules. The summit is well named and well timed. In the age of AI and automation, young Indians will need to adapt and become agile. They'll need to learn throughout their careers just to stay relevant. Developing competencies and reskilling will become a way of life, not a stage of life. And succeeding in this new economy won't be easy, but technology will make it possible. I believe online learning can provide the kind of breakthrough that India urgently needs. By being highly affordable, online education democratizes access to the world's best education for millions of people, including those in the most remote corners of the country. And for most Indians who don't have the luxury to put their lives on hold to study, online learning gives them the flexibility to learn while they work. Over the next few years, I see a majority of the learning in India moving online, and India will learn with the world. India is Coursera's fastest growing market and second in size only to the US. We had 60,000 new learners each month from India. And our data shows that 50% of India learners on Coursera are employed, which means that these folks are working and upskilling at the same time. They're taking classes from the best universities in the world on topics such as machine learning, data science, and business communications. Online classrooms have the potential to not only equal, but surpass the physical classroom experience. Even on-campus programs will have a substantial online component. Today, our degree students at Coursera collaborate in small cohorts in virtual classrooms. They interact with the best minds across the globe. Students learn with live video, advanced communication technology, and productivity applications that allow real-time, interactive, team-based collaboration. Today, an Indian student in Agra or Cochin can earn a degree from a top-ranked US or European program at a fraction of the cost and without quitting their job or moving their family. I expect they will soon be able to earn one from India's programs as well. I believe India's top colleges can lead in online learning, offering made-in-India degrees that will be coveted around the world. India has built enduring world-class institutions like IISc, IITs, and IIMs. However, these institutions serve only a fraction of the students seeking to learn. Many millions more in India and around the world could be served if India's top institutions go online with global scale. Our experience at Coursera gives a good idea of what this might look like. The degree credentials earned on Coursera are identical to on-campus degrees. To give just one example, the University of Illinois works with Coursera to offer an online MBA program with the same high standards and rigor as the on-campus program. Graduates of the online degree programs are issued the same credentials from the university as in-person students, with no mention that it's an online degree. It's an MBA earned online. As we develop and scale degree programs from other top-ranked universities, especially in the US and Europe, it provides a model that can be used by top universities in India as well. Particularly for India, mobile will be a key to delivering online learning. Just as I've seen in Mexico, France, China, and Vietnam, young people across India are accessing their worlds through their phones. It's estimated that almost half of India's population will get connected to the internet through smartphones by 2020. Today, almost all of the 2,600 courses offered on Coursera can be taken with a mobile phone, and you can download these courses onto your phone with a Wi-Fi hotspot so you don't have to use your data plan. And about 50% of our degree learners are using their mobile phones to earn their master's degree online. And finally, a trend that we are clearly seeing is a collaboration between universities and industry. Many of you here today will play a role in changing India's education paradigm by offering broadly recognized credentials that fill a very real need in the job market. While universities continue to provide more durable, foundational knowledge, they are partnering with industry to add hands-on projects and applied skills to the learning experience. Google has done this with the launch of their IT support professional certificate on Coursera just in January. Turns out many companies are struggling to fill IT jobs, and they're having trouble finding qualified talent. With no college degree, with no background in computer science, an individual can come on Coursera, take 6 courses, become certified as an IT support professional, and have direct access to job opportunities at many companies, including Google, Bank of America, Walmart, Infosys, and many others. In addition, some universities are planning to grant credit towards their degrees to individuals who have taken the Google IT certification. This model could be a great fit for India. I call it a gateway credential because it opens up technology careers to those most at risk of being left behind. If corporate India runs with this idea and creates other gateway credentials for tomorrow's jobs, it could benefit hundreds of thousands of workers in India and around the world. In closing, Prime Minister Modi summed up the tremendous opportunity ahead in his recent address at the World Economic Forum. He observed, "The youth of India are capable of contributing to the building of a $5 trillion economy by 2025. When innovation and entrepreneurship make them job givers and not just job seekers, you can imagine how many more paths will open up for them and for the country." I am inspired by India. For thousands of years, India has been a source of enlightenment and enlightened thinking for millions of people across almost every culture in the world. And I have no doubt that at this time of change and possibility, India will again lead the way and inspire us all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your perspective and that address, Mr. Majankalda, education, and thank you very much for making it just a click away. I'm wondering what to sign up next on Coursera for. Maybe deep learning is a good option. We'll pick your brains on that. But it's time we turn our focus and our attention to the first detailed panel discussion of the evening. It has been pointed out here in this August gathering that it was at Davos earlier this year when the Prime Minister made a clarion call of making India a $5 trillion economy by 2025. So what will it take for us to get there and beyond? Is $10 trillion really in sight? All right, as soon as the arrangements are made, we'll be calling our panelists right here on stage. I request all of you to please kindly take your seats. Please join me in welcoming on stage Mr. Bob Van Dijk, CEO Naspers, for this panel discussion. But your hands together for our eminent panel right here. Join me also in welcoming back on stage Mr. Dominic Barton, Global Managing Partner, McKinsey & Company. And back on stage, Mr. William B. Thomas, Chairman, KPMG International. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome on stage two tall corporate leaders from India, Mr. Anil Agarwal, Chairman, Vedanta Group, and Mr. Rana Kapoor, CEO, Yes Bank. Mr. Rana Kapoor, CEO, Yes Bank. And to take the discussion forward, I'd like to invite my colleague and managing editor of ET Now, Mr. Sandeep Gurumurthy, to take things forward. Sandeep.
Thank you for that, Supriya. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed wonderful to be here with such an outstanding panel. And just to put this discussion in perspective, Dominic spoke about India's journey to being a $10 trillion economy. And Mr. Agarwal, let me start with you. We heard some of our tall global leaders, but if I could start with you, to put these numbers in perspective, even if India were to grow at a compounded rate of 7%, over the next several years, we're estimated to hit the $6 trillion mark by 2027 with a per capita income of over $4,000 and lifting us to a sort of upper middle income status. So in some sense, it's not so much about what we do right as it is about what we don't do wrong, about what we don't mess up. The structural story is so strong in India that is more critical. Would you agree with that?
No, India has a huge, solid foundation. And as you said, India will give surprise, so the positive surprise. So as you said, as a calculation, it may take longer, but I'm very optimistic. I'm very, very optimistic. I see tremendous three pillar. One is absolutely the huge technology background, the kind of mind we have in the South, the people all over the world, people look at the technology hub and the technology source from India. Number two is the infrastructure. Not even 10% infrastructure has been made. So 90% infrastructure, any country, whether it's Lincoln to now, it is the infrastructure which a catalyst to start the economy. And number two, India has a tremendous base of natural resource. Whether it's oil, whether it's gold, whether it's copper, whether it's iron ore. And it is not even 2% has been explored yet. So with this two, when the economy open up, I feel that it will accelerate much more.
Okay. If I could come to you, Mr. Rana Kapoor, let's assume that do no wrong, in some sense, or at least there will be no self-goals. As they say in Hindi, ummeed pe duniya kayam hai. So let's assume that things are on track on the policy front. What is the one thing that you think needs to be done over the medium term to ensure that India gets to that $10 trillion mark by 2030, like you pointed out?
No, what Anandji has said is fabulous. But the fact of the matter is that we have to take steps short, medium, long. In the short term, we have taken many significant steps in terms of very stratospheric changing reforms. I need not elaborate on that. And I think these reforms have to now become fundamental to the execution of the economy's future success. Secondly, we have to recognize that the jobs in India and the skills in India are fundamentally created in the micro, small, medium enterprises end of the pyramid of the jobs, and that is the job pyramid which is fundamentally the most important in our nation. It's 1.25, 1.5 billion in future. The jobs are going to be created there. So the skilling sets, as Dominic said very brilliantly in his speech a little while ago, that the fundamental aspect is to create the skills there. And I think the third aspect is, like Anilji said, that the infrastructure opportunity is like, on the anvil. I think we're doing a good job of some sectors like roads and all. I think we can do fantastic on transportation and logistics. Right. I think we can do even more brilliantly given a head start on renewable energy. This 175 gigawatts, which seem to be a moving challenge, but today I think is very feasible and at a lucrative rate as long as there is proper legal conformance and proper, statutory conformance to the pricing, regulations. Right. So I am deeply convinced that the Indian economy is on a threshold of 10% CAGR between now and 2025. And from 2025, if you can build that momentum to 2030, we have to be technical on these points, that it needs a CAGR of 12% thereafter to get to a 10 trillion economy. And I'm deeply convinced it can happen.
10% CAGR. I mean, I hope everyone in this room is, of course, I understand nominal growth. I hope everyone
that's easy, huh?
That's a little easier, assuming inflation isn't too high. Okay, let me come to you, Bob, and that's an important aspect to talk about because you've been betting on India for a while. You've been investing in India for some years now with stakes in Make My Trip and Flipkart. Tell us, what is it that you are so bullish about when it comes to India? Is it the market size? Is it the demographic dividend? What is it that makes you so bullish about India?
Yeah, so many of the points that Dominic actually mentioned are the drivers of what makes us excited. So the number of people that will be migrating into the middle class in India is a stunning number. But there's one number that gets us even more excited. So we started investing in the Indian market in earnest in 2008. We were actually here in Delhi in our internet conference 2008. And at the time, India had about 10 million internet users, this is a decade ago, which was the same as Holland, population 16 million. So it's a country 70 times bigger, same internet market. 5 years ago, again, we had a big internet gathering here. India was at about roughly 30 to 40 million internet users, market the size of France, right? Less than a 20th of the population of India. Now, today, India is between 300 and 400 million, depending on which metric you want to look at, internet users, comparable to nothing, right? It's bigger than the US. It's still obviously not as big as China, but it's the second largest internet market in the world, and it's gotten there in a period of 3-4 years, fundamentally. And besides representing probably the most exciting transformational internet growth opportunity in history, it also, what we've seen in China, which was tremendous for us, but also for China, is that explosive growth drives new innovation. It drives innovation that wouldn't happen elsewhere. It leads to leapfrogs, and I think the innovations that will come out of India that will actually be new to the rest of the world, that is what I'm really excited about. It's happened in China, I'm sure it will happen in India.
It's happened in China, so it should happen in India. Dominic, since you spoke at length about why you're bullish in India, I want to ask you about what could be a risk. And people often talk about the execution risk, and that's a concern you've flagged. And you know, as a consultant, it's only, a strategy can be very good, but if the execution isn't good, it's not going to have any impact. So how big a risk is that when we talk of a $10 trillion journey, that we get the execution wrong?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with what's being said with the digitization and also the speed, as you said. I don't think things aren't going to be nice. You could have things pop out in the digital side. So just want to say I'm very bullish on that. But on execution, what I worry more about is consistency that we know what we need to do. If a new government comes in at some point down the road, let's not change you got to have consistency. I think that's really important for infrastructure, because people, if they want to invest in infrastructure, they want to know that there's going to be a consistency in the regulatory approach and how pricing is done. Yeah. If we're going to, if you're going to think about the rules and how decisions get made, you got to have consistency. And I would also argue one thing we can learn from what's going on in the United States right now is I think all of us, at least I did, we underestimated the impact that deregulation had on economic growth there. And it is, whether you like it or not and how that's working, it has led to growth. And so one of the things I would be looking at in India, how can we get decisions done faster? I would have a clock speed. Why does it take so long to make an infrastructure decision, whatever decision? I think there should be measures out there on speed. Mm-hmm. Because when it isn't out there, then there can be all sorts of reasons, and that's a competitive advantage. You get more capital, you get more innovation. I think you can unleash more people. So the key to me is the kind of the consistency of policy, if you will, and then measuring this clock speed of how decisions get made.
Bill, if I could come to you, what are going to be the key catalysts of change? If you look at the next 5-10-year horizon, is it going to be a combination of the economy making this whole digital transition and GST and the upside that we could get on account of these two factors? Is that going to be the key catalyst of change according to you?
I think the catalyst of change is going to come from the consistency that Dom talked about. I mean, at the end of the day, the opportunity is there. If the reforms continue to make India more open for business, that will create economic growth in a continuing continuing increasing pace. But I think the real catalyst of change is going to come when you recognize that educating the population of incredibly talented people that you have in this country is, if we solve that, then 10 trillion, I think, is in reach. And the reason why is because you've got to open up, the country is not going to get there by itself. So it has to be open to the world in terms of economic flows. But the world will come here to access that talent if it's accessible. And I think that is the real catalyst for change.
So Anil Agarwal, on GST, we all know and we've all spoken at length about how transformational it is. But when will the upside of GST be visible to the economy? When will it be visible in corporate balance sheets? The upside that we've spoken about for months and years now, when is it going to show in the real economy and in corporate balance sheets, according to you?
I think it is showing. You can't expect overnight anything to happen. It has to settle down. The government, the public, the way we do business is transforming. And it's the question of time. There is no question in the world anybody will say that GST is not the right thing. But if you look at India, if you look at, is a place of entrepreneur. There is a lot of similarity between US and India. India has grown because of the entrepreneurship. India, if you look at all the socialist country, they run by the government. The companies, the business run by the government. Most of the democratic country is the business run by the entrepreneur, the private. The government look at the governance. And India is moving in that direction. At the moment, it's like a khichdi. This has to be resolved. The Indian entrepreneur has tremendous capability in India. Anything which they have trusted on, they have delivered. Whether it's a telecom, whether it's the steel, whether it's the airport, port, anything, the moment the government entrusted them, see the kind of world-class capacity they built. So this is the one thing that has to be recognized, that India is the place for entrepreneur. I'll give you the smallest example. The ONGC. ONGC today market cap is $30 billion. If it has been privatized, it will be $300 billion. I'll give you the example. Hindustan Zinc, when we bought, the market cap was 2,000 crore. Today, in 10 years' time, is 2 lakh crore. Same company. And it is run by the same people. We have to understand the DNA of India. India DNA is very similar. It's a democratic country. It is the DNA of entrepreneur. Right. And the more entrepreneurship come, you will see how the GST is the right direction, demonetization is, at least there is a prime minister who take a decision.
Right. Okay. Mr. Kapoor, if I could come to you, and I like the part that you said in your speech on how there needs to be this genetic transformation when it comes to entrepreneurs. We speak a lot about ease of doing business and not enough about way of doing business. Has way of doing business changed, and does it need to change more in corporate India for us to get to this $10 trillion? Because what's happened over the last 2-3 years is also a formalization of the economy on account of some of these reforms that Mr. Agarwal spoke about as well. Does it necessitate a change in the way of doing business?
So what Anil just said now is like you're evangelizing the potential of the economy, right? Number one. Number two, we have to understand that deep within the economy, there are a lot of choked assets, right, which are going through a little bit of turbulence through new regulation. And because of the regulation, there are speed breakers, and now they will transit into productive capacity. So India is the most beautiful country in the whole world, in my opinion, on a buy versus build opportunity. No, really. And number three, what I like to believe is that the consumption demand, which is practically permanent, right? I don't have to spell that out. It's a permanent demand. How do you convert that with investment in capital formation, which is where India has been a little hesitant, has been on pause. It's happened in, like I mentioned earlier, in the auto sector, in two-wheelers, and many other sectors. But India must now make bold decisions. Industrialists must make bold decisions to recognize that there is a very sweet spot in the economy. Right now, with global tailwinds, please remember, India has precipitated as an economy for the last 10 years and the best part of the last 7 years because of headwinds of global economics, right? So we could not export, we could not even import intelligently and oil, whatever. The point is, today you have a global economy which is growing, as was stated only last month, at 3.9%. Right. So when mature economies and with the whatever $20 trillion base and on, grow at 3.9%, that creates a lot of tailwinds for India to tap. I think India's automatic story, unless we put a bullet through our own foot, अपने पाँव पे कुल्हाड़ी मारेंगे तो बात अलग है. तो मुझे जैसे लग रहा है कि we can do wonders in getting back to a 9% growth story at most in the next 1.5 years.
Since we spoke about private investment, I have to ask Mr. Agarwal before I come to the rest of the panel. Are you seeing early signs of revival in private investment activity? Why is it that corporate India isn't still putting its money where its mouth is?
No, they have a tremendous capacity to risk taking. I can tell you one thing for sure. It is all about taking the risk. And I think the government, the Indian entrepreneurs are definitely looking how the government policies are changing, how things are settling. It's very important the way Prime Minister Modi, every day I'm seeing his speech, he's talking about, taking away the bureaucracy, as mentioned, the red carpet. Everywhere he said, we have a red carpet, not less bureaucracy. It is showing a way. There is no question the amount of talent. If you go to California, the maximum startup is by the Indians. The maximum startup is by Indians. Why not in India? It will happen. It is we have the Niti Aayog deputy chairman here. These are very, very important. They are participating, and I 100% believe things will change.
Okay, you were just speaking about Silicon Valley and startups, and we just had Dara walk in almost at the same time. But let me turn to you, Dominic, and again, you touched upon it on the demographic dividend, and I'm trying to just try and put it in perspective. In India, we're looking at about 120 million people are estimated to join the workforce over the next 10 years. That's about 20% of our of our current workforce. How big an upside is that going to give in terms of to India from a long-term growth potential?
It's a humongous upside, because remember, the biggest driver of productivity growth is labor participation. As I said, most OECD countries are seeing the exact opposite. So there's a massive headwind that's coming their way. They've had a tailwind for 50 years. It's now a huge headwind. But the key is educating them, is skilling the people, right? And this is where I said, it was interesting with the Coursera discussion too, which I very much agree, and others are building businesses in these areas too. We can train people in 3 months to get jobs. We don't have to send them away for 2 years or 3 years to do it. So I think we have to rethink, if we're going to do conventional education on that scale, just forget it. I don't think it's going to work. But that's okay. Let's rethink how we do it, and then have people move in the system. And again, I think companies are going to play a big part of that. Well, one example I've used is, AT&T, Randall Stevenson, who's a hardcore capitalist, said, 40% of my people will not have the skills to do what's needed in 5 years, just given, and there's 280,000 people, 40,000. He developed a online training program with Georgia Tech, Udacity. It's part-time, so mid-career people can do it. And he just did it. He didn't wait for someone to tell him to do it. He just built it, and it works. And so I just think we have to do that. And but the benefit of that, I don't know what that works out to into exact GDP numbers, but all I do know is it's huge.
Right.
Yeah.
Important. Bob, the other opportunity, of course, is to talk about the e-commerce space. And how big is the e-commerce opportunity to your mind over the next decade or so? You know, in 2017, e-commerce sales were around the $15 billion mark. Can it touch $200 billion in the next 10 years? Are we looking at that kind of growth in e-commerce in India?
I think we'll get there a whole lot quicker than that, actually. So there's a few numbers to look at. So currently, e-commerce penetration as a percent of overall retail in India stands at 3 to 4%. Now, if you look, so the global benchmark is probably where the UK is at around 18, 19%. The catch-up that a market like China has made, I believe India is on the verge of, they went from sub 10 to 17 in 5 years' time. So if India can get to 15% internet penetration in 5 years, that is, I think you'll be talking about a 10x rather than the order of magnitude. And I think there's another really important factor that we think about when we think about e-commerce in India, is that if you look at structured retail as a percentage of total retail, it's one of the lowest in the world in India, right? So that means that when very large e-commerce businesses like Flipkart come to scale, I think they will take a bigger role in the lives of the average Indian than they even would do in sort of Western economies. So I think the opportunity, it's hard to overstate the size of the opportunity in e-commerce. I think it's a 10x in 10 years.
10x in 10 years, that's incredibly optimistic. Bill, I can't not ask you about the one story that's sort of gripped the headlines over the last few days, which is, of course, the fraud with one of the PSU banks. Do incidents like this hurt our attractiveness as an investment destination when a banking fraud hits a developing economy, exposes the weaknesses in the banking system, in the audit framework in the country? Do they hurt our attractiveness as an investment destination?
Well, I certainly feel like when this happens, it's how the country responds and what the response is that makes the difference. And I think recognizing sort of the how and the why, sort of understanding what exactly went wrong, how did it happen, and ensuring that every single party involved recognizes that trust in the capital markets is of critical importance to the growth of the country, frankly, the growth of any country. I think that has to be front and center in terms of the next little while in terms of questions that are asked. But trust is going to be essential to drive the growth that you're talking about.
Mr. Kapoor, I have to ask you.
I want to make one point on what he said, that every problem can be solved through reconciliation and not through media aggression.
But as an ace banker, sir, Mr. Agarwal spoke about it as well. Should the government take this opportunity to liberalize the banking space further? He spoke about how, privatization. Is it time to look at, a privatization of PSU banks, improve governance there? Do you think this is an opportunity for that, for reforms in that direction?
I have a very strong belief that the private sector in India naturally performs better than a more subdued public sector system. At the same time, public sector system are public utilities. So you can't unwind them so quickly. Nobody understands what's happened. The fiscal dispensation of India in the quantitative easing that happened in the global crisis in 2008, 9, and 10 happened through the public sector banking system.
Right.
So you cannot change the plates so easily because the government did not have the Uncle Sam kind of proposition. The Reserve Bank of India had only blessings of giving soft interest rates. But the fundamental aspect is that you cannot change so easily. So my personal view is that the government banks have to survive, and there has to be a proper forced ranking of the ones that can survive and the others that need to amalgamate and the others that need to demise.
Sure.
But the public utility, public aspect of these banks in catering to national India cannot be taken away. It's not an easy decision.
Okay,
it's like MTNL and BSNL. It's like Air India.
They serve a strategic purpose. That's a fair point.
They're strategically mission critical, right?
Okay, closing comments. We're running out of time. I want to start with you. Mr. Rana Kapoor started off by saying $10 trillion by 2030. He's got his eyes set on 2030. Mr. Agarwal, when do you see us getting to $10 trillion mark? And I'm going to ask this to the entire panel.
I can talk about my subject. You know, I'm a natural resource person. India cannot live importing 85% of oil. You have a $70 billion worth of reserve. I produce 30% oil of the country. I produce the sweet crude. I produce a low sulfur crude. And I believe that India should have at least 20, 30, 40 companies to come and produce oil. Every company come from the foreign, want to set up the refinery. Every company want and set up the petrochemical. I produce oil at $6. I want the economy to revive. Fundamental, it is your energy. Right. Number two, the natural resource. We import 100% of gold. We have the best patch of gold, copper, iron ore, anything you talk about. These has to be processed in India. Aluminum. And these thousands of SMEs has to develop. The startup has to come. McKinsey people are here. They will confirm the kind of talent which we have. The banking system, everything will revive the moment you revive SMEs. And this SMEs, one is the technology, other is to start up this manufacturing. Even if you see the automobile, there are 50 parts required of aluminum, in aluminum. Right. And these parts being imported. This has to be manufactured here. Okay. Important thing is the quality.
Okay. So 30 seconds to each one of you. By when will we get to $10 trillion? 2030, before that, after that?
Yeah, so I'll say if you continue to harness the entrepreneurial spirit of the population and continue on the journey to open up the country for business, I think you'll get there before 2030.
Before 2030, that's a very optimistic, Bob.
Yeah. I agree with you.
It's going to be tough for you to say after 2030 now.
I'm actually similarly optimistic. And the thing that makes me really excited is I think India is on the way to build a real domestic technology innovation capability. Unlike Europe, which I think is actually a digital colony of the US in many ways. So if India can avoid becoming a digital colony and really have an ecosystem of tremendous entrepreneurs, decision makers, and leaders here, I think they can accelerate every business. And you'll get there in 28.
Digital colony of the West. I've got questions on that for my next guest as well. But Dominic, by when do you think we'll get to $10 trillion?
I think we should set a target of 2030. I see no reason why you can't. I mean, we used to be shocked and awed when the tiger economies grew at 6 to 7%. We thought that was a shocker. Well, who says that has to be the case? And I think I go back to the demographics. I go back to what we're seeing on the e-commerce side, and it sounds like other things that we can unleash. I think it would be shameful if we're not ambitious. It's shameful for all those people. Let's be ambitious and let it rip.
Right. I want to add one more, if we get to this 10 trillion, you know what happens? So today our per capita, which is $1,709, catapults to $6,600. The demand for India, that means food, agriculture, education, healthcare, you name it, every product in India for the next 12 to 13 years is going to be in tremendous demand. So this is the best consumption, best investment, best capital formation economy in the world today.
And you can't dispute that. And for the benefit of, there's someone's done it in the past. China moved from $2.5 trillion in 2003 to $11 billion in 2017. So they've done it. Why can't we? On that optimistic note, I'm going to wrap this panel. Thank you so much to this wonderful panelists. Please give a big round of applause for our wonderful panel here this evening as we debate India's journey to the $10 trillion mark. Thank you so much, sir.
Thanks very much for that very rich discussion, the panelists and Sandeep. I request the panelists to kindly take their seats back in the audience. And as we set the stage for our next round of a very, very interesting discussion, we're keeping our fingers crossed to turning into a $10 trillion economy. I request Sandeep to stay back for our next chat. We finally have a date on the $10 trillion economy mark, 2030 or before that. All right, our next chat, and this one's going to be very interesting, is with none other than the man who's redefining urban mobility. But he doesn't want to stop at just that. Join me in welcoming Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO of Uber, whose favorite Indian entrepreneur, according to his own admission, is none other than Prime Minister Modi himself. Sandeep Gurumurthy and Dara Khosrowshahi, the stage is all yours.
Thank you. Dara, welcome to ET-GBS. Now, my colleague Supriya got to interview you yesterday morning, so now I know 3 things about you that I didn't know before. One, of course, that the thing that he misses the most about Iran is food, yes. That he loves playing Dungeons and Dragons, and his favorite entrepreneur is not anyone sitting in this room, but is Prime Minister Modi. Why Prime Minister Modi? We're just being politically correct?
No, because it's actually very difficult as an entrepreneur to be entrepreneurial at scale. You know, the bigger you get, the more bureaucratic institutions tend to get, the more no is an easy answer. And I think that what the Prime Minister is doing in terms of pushing India forward with a global view, pushing progressive reforms forward, and keeping the country open, and you see the optimism as far as where the economy is going, is remarkable. And to be entrepreneurial at scale is a skill that hopefully I can find as I take over Uber and look to scale the company to the next level.
You've had a pretty busy 2 days, action-packed schedule. How has India treated you so far?
It's been great. This is my first time in India. I've never been here, and the market for us is a very, very important market, not only in terms of our business today, but more importantly, where it's going to be 5 to 10 years from now. And for me, it's just been a jolt of pure energy. This morning was my favorite because we got to sit down with some of our driver partners and talk about our product and talk about how we can improve. And there are plenty of suggestions in terms of where we can improve.
What was the quirkiest of them all? I mean, the one that took you by surprise?
You know, we have our #1 priority for us this year is standing for safety. Everyone wants, wherever you are on the globe, we want our platform to be the safest mobility platform. And usually you take that in the context of it being safe for the passenger. But the drivers were talking about safety as it relates to them. One little example is that they're always encouraging passengers to put on their seatbelt, and the passenger sometimes says, no, I don't want to put on your seatbelt. So we were talking about whether we can incentivize passengers to put on their seatbelt as well. So that was a little bit of a surprise. But the great story is that we are allowing their 300,000 micro-entrepreneurs on our platform now who are making a living, who are earning the respect of their families and their kids, et cetera, by earning a living on our platform. And they truly are micro-entrepreneurs who are figuring out all the rules and the bells and whistles on that platform to use it in their own way. So it was great to see.
You managed to meet a whole host of policymakers in Delhi. The one meeting I'm curious to know about is with Jayant Sinha, Minister of State for Aviation. Does that indicate that you have plans to bring your flying cars to India soon, and how soon?
Well, I don't want to announce anything before it's time to announce it, but listen, it's as urban mobility scales, and to some extent, a number of the technologies that we're bringing to bear in terms of mobility, including sharing, are designed to lower costs and to lower congestion as well. But as you lower cost, demand for more mobility is going to come in. More and more people are going to move into cities all around the world. And just as we went vertical in terms of office space, and just as we went vertical in terms of residences in these super cities, we're going to have to go vertical in terms of transportation. And that's, for us, that's what Uber Elevate is all about. And we are absolutely open for dialogue and open for business. And you know, it is something that we'd love to bring to India sometime down the road.
Okay, that brings me to this interesting exchange of tweets that you had with Elon Musk when he said Uber's flying cars are likely to be huge, noisy, and blow anything that isn't nailed down when they land. How are you going to counter that?
I have been told never to take Elon Musk on Twitter. So I think I was not wise in replying to that. You know, listen, let's see how it turns out. But the battery technology and the electrification of these engines allows for much smaller rotors. It makes for safer transport and also reduces radically noise pollution. You know, building lanes of air, there are issues, safety issues, for example, in that, but it's a heck of a lot less costly than burrowing underground.
What are your thoughts on Hyperloop as a mass transportation service? And the reason I ask is Virgin Hyperloop might be coming to India pretty soon. So yes. What are your thoughts on that as a mass transportation service?
Well, I think that there are two different issues. The Hyperloop use case, from what I'm aware of, is, you know, city to city, it's longer distances. In general, as we think about Uber Elevate, these are shorter distances within a city. Let's say from an airport to the city center, where there are going to be high volume corridors. So I think that there are two different use cases. I think that it's a fascinating use case, and ultimately I think both could play a part in the future of urban mobility.
So all this really points to my question on your larger vision for urban mobility in some sense. And, you know, you've sort of said that your stamp on Uber is going to be how you can transform that company from being essentially a car ride-sharing platform to a platform that will reimagine transportation. So what would Uber be like? I mean, should it be like the Amazon of mobility or the Uber of everything?
I think I'd say the Amazon of mobility for everything. Right, we've started with cars and cars moving people. And ultimately, we are going to have cars and moto. We're putting auto on the platform as well. But we're also opening up the platform for third parties. We don't have to be providing the transportation on a proprietary basis. And we're starting small. We're starting, for example, with bicycles in San Francisco. But ultimately, we want to be able to have any provider of mobility solutions plug into our platform, plug into our payment solutions, and the newer platforms that we're building essentially are able to get into transportation, point-to-point transportation or point-to-point transportation, let's say taking a moto to a train to your home. We will be able to go multimodal and eventually have any kind of transportation. It starts with people. But we're also getting into the eats business, for example, with food. It's one of our fastest growing parts of our business in India. Whether you go from food to things is TBD, but ultimately we want Uber to be about getting from point A to B, whichever way that is the cheapest, the easiest, and most convenient for the person or food or the next thing.
But what does all this mean from a regulatory point of view? Because rules governing transport differ from country to country, and in a place like India, from state to state. Yeah. Are you worried that all this could be sort of stuck in red tape and that it will be sort of very difficult for you to do this at scale?
I think it's a real concern for us. But at the same time, we also have to respect that we are doing business in cities and states, and we have to do business the way that our city partners are comfortable. That said, this is a scale game, right? Our goal as a company is going to be to reduce the cost of transportation and mobility as much as possible and make it available to everyone everywhere, not just high traffic corridors, but lower traffic corridors as well. And that requires us to relentlessly lower costs. And we want the maximum amount of dollars that a rider is paying for that ride to go into the pocket of the driver. Every piece of regulation, et cetera, that we have to tune for, and every different regulation adds complexity into the system. If you add complexity into the system, you're introducing friction into the process. If you introduce friction into the process, you ultimately have to raise prices. So we will have the dialogue with the regulatory authorities. We have to respect the places in which we do business. Ultimately, we're doing business on top of cities' infrastructure. But the more consistent the regulatory framework can be, the more national the regulatory framework can be, the less friction on the system, and ultimately the lower costs as it relates to mobility, and the wider our mobility solutions become available. So I think it's a win-win, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. Where does India feature then in all these plans? You said you continue to be extremely bullish in the market and will continue to invest aggressively. But what sort of India-specific innovations can we expect? I mean, Ola, for example, has integrated auto rickshaws with their platform, right? So what sort of local India-specific innovations can we expect from Uber?
Well, I think first of all, we've invested over $1 billion in India to date. India represents over 10% of our transactions on a global basis. So it's a very, very big part of our business. And as you can expect, if I look forward 5 years from now, India is going to be a significantly higher portion of our transactions than it is today. I actually had a great conversation yesterday with Minister Jayant on India, and what really struck me is that the Indian consumer is a really tough consumer, right? The Indian consumer actually insists on a very, very high service level at a very low cost. And what we talked about is that India actually can be the staging ground for the next 6 billion consumers who we want to make mobility available to. That the Western markets are fundamentally different from the developing markets, and if we can build a business in India, we can then build that business all around the world. I mean, seriously, right? When you look at, for example, payments and really moving to digital low-cost payments, India, and especially the Indian government, is a leader there, and that's something that we want to continue elsewhere. If you look at our solutions to make sure that our solutions are available for high bandwidth use cases, but also low bandwidth use cases, that's another very important emerging marketing technology that starts with India. We were talking with some of our driver partners who want a service where if you don't have a smartphone, you can call or text and get an Uber to pick you up. Again, that is a technology that we are going to develop for the Indian market that we're going to export to other markets as well. So, as part of all that, we're also very significantly increasing our investment in Indian engineering talent. For Uber, most of our engineers are in San Francisco, and there are some incredibly talented engineers, obviously, in San Francisco, but we want to quadruple or quintuple the number of engineers that we have in India this year, and then we'll increase beyond that next year. It's a very entrepreneurial group. They understand emerging markets in a way that engineering in San Francisco can't. And you know, they work incredibly, incredibly hard, and they have a desire to succeed. So we want to be in this market, not only in terms of our mobility solutions, but in terms of the tech talent that's going to take this business forward for the next 5 to 10 years.
On a more personal level, how much of your leadership do you owe to your formative years? You know, your family had to leave Iran, your thriving family business was sort of nationalized overnight. Is this perhaps the reason why you're sort of very vocal on immigration policies as well? The fact that you are actually living the American dream.
Yeah, very much so. And you know, my family lost everything when I was 9 years old, and I came to the States. And for the kids, it's a lot easier. We didn't notice much, right? We still, family was all around us. The quality of television, I'm looking at Reed, God, was a lot better. We had at the time, I remember, 30 cable channels, and it was awesome, you know, for us. That's the only thing that I cared about when we came to the States. But, you know, what it taught me, first of all, was that, you know, you lose everything, but you get right back up. So I think that this entrepreneurial idea of failure teaching you that you can come back, learning from your failures and trying again and again and again, came with me as a young age because I saw that with my family. And then I'm just incredibly lucky to have immigrated to the United States during a time when the U.S. was welcoming. You know, this is our country. The United States is an immigrant nation. And there's a specific kind of self-selected group who wants to move from their home country and get out of the comforts of their home country and come and chase the American dream. And I've always talked about this. The American dream is the single most incredible brand in the world. Everybody knows what it means, what the American dream means. It means if you work hard, if you respect the rule of law, if you get a good education, you have as good a chance to succeed as anyone else. There's no bigger brand than the American dream. And I'm worried that with the attitudes that the administration has about immigration, et cetera, that wonderful brand is getting bruised.
You just prompted my next question, because is the American dream possible at all in an insular world? Even this morning we saw severe restrictions on skilled visas from the US. Is this going to be the new normal? And what does it mean for internet companies like Uber?
All I can say is I hope not, right? I think that in the end, countries tend to do what's right. And I think that you look at India, I mean, this is a country that is moving forward because of the unbelievable talent that you see here. And I think if the America knows what's good for it from the long term, from a demographic standpoint, from a skill standpoint, we'll get to the right answer. And that means being a welcoming country, people who want to come in and want to contribute.
Just two last questions. One, what would you say to critics who say that Uber is succeeding at the cost of a local Indian company? This thing gets, talked about a lot as well, that, India shouldn't be a digital colony of the West, and that, we should have our own company or look at the Chinese way of protecting, their local companies. What would you say to critics?
Listen, I'd say that India should have its own local companies, and by the way, has its own local companies that are very, very strong. Our competitor, our local Indian competitor, is a very strong competitor. But I don't think that countries can improve by closing their doors. I think that one of the great strengths of India is how global it is. And ultimately, globalization introduces competition, but competition ultimately creates goods and services that are superior and goods and services that can sing. So I think that while short-term it may be satisfying to close your doors, from a long-term standpoint, the decisions that the Indian government has made and the welcoming attitude to global competition, I think will make India a better place. And by the way, I do think that, India is a tough place to do business. If you try to do business in India the Western way, you're going to fail. So I think that to some extent, the global players who compete in India, they have to become Indian. They have to become local. They have to have Indian leadership, just as we do. And it's that Indian leadership that then can make us a better company. So I think together, the two become a better unit.
My last question to you, Dara, every visitor to India usually has a bucket list. We saw Justin Trudeau do that with his family. What's your bucket list for India? Since this is your first visit, are there places that you want to visit, things that you want to eat?
I'm a little afraid of the spicy food. People told me about the Indian spicy food, so I'm not sure about where I want to eat. But listen, this one is classic. At some point I really want to see the Taj Mahal. It sounds the other Taj Mahal, and it sounds and feels spectacular. I'm a big hiker, so I want to bring my family here and go to the north and hike in the mountains because I've heard it's absolutely beautiful. So I'd say that's my big to-do.
All right. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Dara Khosroo for being so candid this evening. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dara, and thank you, Sandeep, for that exciting and, may I add, an uber cool conversation. Be rest assured, Dara, some of us will be taking an Uber back home tonight. But our next speaker this evening, and I say that with a lot of responsibility, is making an addict of us all. Yes, Reed Hastings, founder and CEO of Netflix, has us all hooked on. And his competition isn't another entertainment company, but like he once famously said, sleep. Join me in welcoming the man who brought Narcos, Frank Underwood, Harvey Specter, and all those legendary characters right into our drawing rooms. Let's hear it for Reed Hastings in conversation with Ronnie Screwvala, co-founder Upgrad.
So Reed, I'm going to get right into it because everyone's talking about a $10 trillion economy, and I've been told to cut 5 minutes off anything that's got to do with media and entertainment compared to a global economy. So you know where the priorities land for everybody, even though you're the
10 trillion, we need entertainment to be 1 trillion.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's the soft power, and we'll come to that.
If everybody does their part of 10 trillion, it will work out.
Okay. So I think just to start off and for the audience here, and to keep the context of what we're talking about in media and entertainment, but much more from a leadership and an entrepreneurship point of view. The big thing is, when do you spot trends? And I think in 1997, the key question is, when you were, as a company, renting videos, and then you moved to being this absolute powerhouse, the question is, in 1997, did you really see it? Could you see the future? Or was it just more opportunistic, serendipity, and a lot of other things that came in the way?
Well, we were very fortunate. We started in 1997 with DVD by post, and that was a full decade only in the US, just waiting for the internet to get fast enough. And finally, in 2005, there was the very first glimmer with YouTube, little postage stamp video when we realized it's beginning. And then in 2007, we launched streaming in the US, in 2010, Canada, and now just 2 years ago here in India.
So does that mean the lesson here for everyone is it unfolds, or vision is really possible at a large scale?
Well, it definitely helps to be able to have confidence in the growth of the internet, but even we couldn't predict the last 2 years of the Indian internet growth. I mean, it's the most phenomenal example anywhere in the world in terms of lower data costs, more people online, expansion of 4G. It's, I mean, so fortunate. And we didn't see that coming. We just got lucky on that one.
Okay. So everyone talks about the global consumer, but I think that especially when it comes to storytelling, is there really a global consumer? Or is India and China global markets, or are they really local markets? And how do companies, and especially companies that tell stories, how do they look at globalization versus localization?
Well, to be very serious for a moment, the path to 10 trillion on beyond, the key thing is avoiding wars. If you look over the last 1,000 years, when you have a big war, there's an enormous setback. And one part of avoiding war is communities understanding each other, and one part of that is entertainment. We had a recent movie, Love Per Square Foot. Thank you for that, Ronnie. Classic sort of Bollywood film. It's great. The key thing is it's doing well for us in India, of course, but it's also doing well around the world. In the US, in the UK, in Mexico. And the more that people see other people like them struggling to get an apartment, struggling to have a relationship, the more communality they feel. And one of the key things for Netflix is really this global sharing of content to increase average people's understanding. Most people around the world don't have a passport. They're not in this audience. And it's critical that they feel a sense of community with other people around the world. And if we can keep peace, then all the economies can grow.
So that's the nice part, because we thought always the challenge was, in India, you always had a problem finding a house, till you said, it's working so globally, it's a universal problem. Everyone has a house problem, especially when you're a younger generation. So I agree, stories do travel in very extents. So just moving to competition, I think where you're sitting, you had legendary media companies on one side, you have the telcos on the other side, and then you got the FANG companies, which one of them is definitely you. So that's a lot of competition. And for a lot of people here in the business community, the big question is, do you really need to enter a crowded space? When do you enter a crowded space? Is it wise to enter a crowded space? And once you do that, actually, how do you deal with such a competitive environment? So what's been the Netflix formula for success?
Well, we're very fortunate that with entertainment, you consume from multiple channels. So it's not like you buy an iPhone or a Samsung. People watch Netflix and YouTube and Hotstar and linear TV, and the mix just depends on the quality of your shows. So if we've got great shows like Altered Carbon that everyone's excited about, then people will tune into us. So it's a constant bite to get people's interest. And that makes it very flexible, which is the only thing we have to do is make great content. And if we do that, then people will watch Netflix.
And I think on a global basis today, with the kind of competition that's there for Netflix over the next 10 years, where do you see your sort of competitive moat building is what I would sort of ask. I mean, where does the moat come about?
Well, as a real global supplier, so instead of just being Hollywood to the world, we're now producing, we just announced 3 more TV shows we're doing here. In India, Sacred Games is one that we've been working on hard. It's about the underworld in Mumbai, and that's coming in December, so a lot happening there. And then when we share those shows around the world, making them in Germany and bringing them here, making them in Spain and bringing them here, all of that is about what creates this rich global conversation that helps understanding.
So I think Sacred Games and your 3 other shows, Love Per Square Foot, is the beginning of that. So how much is of the $8 billion is coming from local and outside of the US as you go forward? Considering the growth of your customer base, the next 100 million, I think disproportionately will come international versus the US, I assume.
That's right. The next 100 million is from India.
The next 100 million is
That's
from
right.
India.
We're about 120 million so far around the world, about 60 million in the US.
So all we need to do is move that $8 billion annual budget for programming to $8 billion into India and then $1 billion for the rest of the world.
We look forward to investing, and the thing that's very unique about India around the world is that cable developed as essentially a free service where cable networks did not get paid. So cable television here is 100% ad supported with, of course, a very low access fee. That's unlike anywhere in the world. Every other country, Singapore, Mexico, Brazil, Japan, cable, it costs more and it has ad-free content, commercial-free content, premium. That hasn't been allowed to develop because of the cable infrastructure. And what Netflix, which is commercial-free, so you just get to enjoy it, it's more like DVD or like the movie theater as an experience, allows is an up-leveling of entertainment experiences at home. And so we're definitely trying to stimulate this economy so that people invest more in entertainment because they enjoy it so much. But there just hasn't been the offering because, again, unique compared to China, to Vietnam, everywhere, is the TV is completely ad-supported. And so that's what we're shifting with our premium space.
So that brings me to sort of price sensitivity, and I think Dara mentioned that Indian consumers are very demanding at the lowest price point. So this is a large market, but it's a price-sensitive market. And if you look at that from a pricing strategy, I know when I started cable television 30 years ago to now, actually the per capita price that a cable TV owner pays or a household pays hasn't gone up in 30 years. And I think the Indian consumer, therefore, hasn't really decided that they want to pay for content. They might start paying for bandwidth now, but not for content. So given that pricing and having a universal price threshold for companies such as yours, how do you view attacking, to get the next 100 million consumers out of a country like this, you'd need to be a lot more flexible about it or rigid about it or pump up the programming, or what would the strategy be?
So Netflix is between 500 and 800 rupees per month, depending on the plan. So more than many other services, but about what a movie ticket costs. And so what we have to do is have such great content that people make the comparison to movie tickets and buying DVDs more than they do to cable. Again, on a global basis, what Indian consumers pay for cable television is very, very low, which keeps the industry smaller than it should be. The Indian entertainment business will be much larger over the next 20 years because of investing in pay services like Netflix and others.
But I guess, well, I think Apple's learned in some way that they've missed the bus here in many ways, I would say, because of their price sensitivity. And Samsung's taken over and many other local manufacturers are. So I guess I was just trying to repitch on the price sensitivity. You feel right now to hold on to it would be the right strategy and evolve that.
We want to be sensitive to great stories, and to really invest and then to be able to fund those great stories by investing in local content. So yes, our strategy is to build up the local content. Of course, we've got the global content also, and to really try to up-level the industry.
So product overpricing would be the real approach here, and I think that would be, in some ways.
Sure, the pricing, again, at 500 rupees a month, it's more than cable, okay, so that can be a shock. But compared to movie tickets and other things, other entertainment experiences, it's very well priced.
So almost everyone in this place here is aspiring that India becomes a sort of a global soft power. And in some ways, we do believe internally, as we introspect, that Bollywood is that, but actually we're not. We're 1% of the global box office, and in many ways, actually, we're larger than life because of our population and of our superstars and the number of movies we make. So just words of advice for you for really, can India make it to being a soft power?
So around the world, serialized TV is a much bigger industry than movies. But again, it hasn't been able to develop because of the only ad support. So Indian TV production values are much lower than movies. And what we're doing is investing, like Sacred Games, in high-touch series, you know, like Narcos, that has these great looks and a global appeal. And I think we'll be a giant exporter of Indian stories, because of course the rich storytelling, thousands of years, there's great stories here.
It all comes from here.
But it hasn't been able to find a market in television because of the lack of premium. So we hope to develop that market, develop those local shows, and be a great exporter, as well as sharer and importer of content from around the world.
And do we need global powerhouses for that? Because I think Disney takes the best stories from around the world, including European fables, and has made them into absolute, you know, sort of tentpole content across the world. And I think some of the best storytelling can originate from India. So is there some lesson to be learned where we can look at it from a global scale?
Yeah, I think we'll see with Sacred Games coming at the end of the year, the first big, spectacular Netflix series. If you enjoyed Narcos or The Crown, or these,
some visuals at the back.
That's right. That's right. Okay, yeah. Very beginning. I think you'll enjoy this, and you'll see, you know, a different side of Mumbai. It's not a pretty, happy, dancy one. You know, it's crime and gritty like Narcos.
Okay, I'm just going to shift tracks a bit, and I think that's because I was sitting next to Jeff at Coursera, and we were just chatting. And your background before this was in education in some form or the other. And just as we see it today, I strongly believe that, you know, the top 3 internet companies in the world tomorrow or the next 10 years will be an education company. But I think the rhetoric today is so much higher that it'll be an entertainment company or a commerce company. So just having seen what you've seen as far as Netflix is concerned and putting on your education hat on, where do you see that? Do you see an education company being in the top 3 internet companies of the world?
You know, it could well be. Education, such a huge aspect of what we do. But it's so important that, for example, a lot of us donate to Khan Academy and the others that are nonprofits because education feels like a right. And so it's tricky to figure out the business models in that area. Whereas entertainment is clearly a pleasure. And so Netflix is going to focus on great entertainment. And there's a soft education, seeing other cultures, language, that kind of thing. But then on a personal basis, I do a bunch of philanthropy in education because I was a high school teacher when I first got out of college for a couple of years, teaching a British O-level math. And I've always had a soft spot for that.
Of course. So Netflix tomorrow is still entertainment, or could be sports, it could be sports, education, and entertainment? Is that a vision for the future at all for a company like Netflix?
Netflix tomorrow is spectacular entertainment, some of the best that's ever been produced. Not sports, not news, but just incredible entertainment from around the world, shared around the world, that really helps open up people's exposure and content that they just can't wait to watch.
Okay, so I think you're very clear about the positioning of where the company needs to go, with the same way that in 1997 you were clear about your vision. So maybe I'll end with just a sort of a quick answer on coming back to the price sensitivity and what we talked about really there. And then I just have one last question after that. But if you had to choose for Netflix 300 million subscribers at $120 or 1 billion subscribers at $60, what would you choose?
I'll say the math again. You want me to go for the big numbers?
It's not about the math.
How about if I say both? 1 billion and
No, I think it's not about the math. I think it's about the crossroad that a lot of people, when they're thinking about their businesses, and they're thinking about scale, then they're thinking about price sensitivity, always think that they can break out. So it's more a question about scale in terms of a base versus price flexibility.
I mean, it is great to entertain everyone, and scale's the right point. And we think at our price points that we can generate that by creating this sense of premium TV, and other competitors also are lifting the market in that way. Because again, it's always been free ad supported, and now we're developing this more DVD-like and movie-like cinematic television. Right. So in ways, it's this great new category.
So just my last question, because I think media and entertainment seems like a terminology for the 20th century. And if we had to redefine a media and entertainment company for the 21st century, and you're kind of doing that already, how would you define a media and entertainment company for the 21st century?
Well, it's a company that uses technology to deliver incredible experiences, emotional experiences, experiences that you go, oh, to a friend, you've got to see this film, you've got to see this show.
And what about data and algorithms and using that? Because I think that is also part of the success formula for the future of digital. So
data is super important, but we spend $1 billion on technology and $8 billion on content. Okay. So on a relative basis, it's about telling incredible stories. Now we spend $1 billion on technology, that's a lot. Right. But we're mostly storytelling.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you for
having us. Thank you all.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ronnie, and thanks very much, Mr. Reed Hastings, for that session. Let's move on, and let's talk about someone who's famously called the first son of the United States, a man who doesn't just share his DNA, but even his name with the 45th president of the US, Donald Trump Jr. Besides being in the limelight, Don, as he's known to friends and colleagues, is also an accomplished businessman with interests in real estate and many crucial partnerships that he boasts of here in India. But what was it really like to be a part of the biggest political event that the world witnessed? Did he really think at the beginning that his father had a shot at the presidency? What are the challenges of being his father's son? And how crucial is India to this business? I invite Donald Trump Jr. for a conversation with me right here on the stage on how he looks as a businessman to reshape Indo-Pacific ties in a new era of cooperation. Don. So thanks very much for being with us. I think a lot has been said about new globalization and all of that, but I'll keep that for a conversation in the later half. I think I first want to talk to you about being your father's son, being a part of the campaign. When the campaign started, and not many people really thought, Donald Trump had a shot at the presidency. What made you differ? What made you think otherwise?
Honestly, it was going with him, being on the road and watching the crowds form. There was an enthusiasm gap that was just lacking in anything else I'd seen in my 40 years. You know, being perhaps a junkie on the sidelines and following, from a distance. You know, when you can be in a New Hampshire primary, it's, let's call it 0 here and pretty much 0 there as well. And you had lines of people waiting for 5 hours to hear, what would then be a politician speaking for a 45-minute speech. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. Who would do that? I wouldn't do that for anything. And these people, I guess, were just fed up. They were sick of being made promises that were never going to be delivered. They were sick of what we're so used to, I think, in terms of politics, pretty much globally, I would say, but certainly in our country, where there's a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And I think they were ready for a change.
But this was a fairly keenly watched election. I mean, everybody was watching it. It was a no-holds-barred battle. There was nothing that was left unsaid. There was nothing that was left undone in this election. What was it like to be a part of the campaign? What were the exciting moments, really?
Well, listen, it was amazing. I mean, it was, I was pretty excited with business before we got into politics, but for me, I got to be sort of the tip of a spear of what you said was, perhaps one of the greatest political upsets in history. Not because it should have been an upset, but that's the way it was sort of pushed from a media narrative that was already dictated. So for me, I got to be a surrogate on something really special before we even had surrogates, because basically anyone that was in that business was, well, that's not going to happen. That could never happen. I have to go with an old standby, some of the people that's going to be one of the 3 people likely to take the crown and move on, and that's what we were going to do. So it was rather unusual. It was an incredible experience to actually go there, to actually be on the ground in all of these places in America that had been left behind, that had watched their American dream exported abroad, and see some of that hardship and see those stories. So it was truly an incredible experience.
I want to talk about the American dream in a little more detail, the quintessential American dream and how it's perhaps being redefined. But there were very low points in this campaign as well. I'm sure there were moments in the campaign that hurt you. As a family, did you at any point in time feel, is this all worth it? Should we be contesting this at all?
Probably every time I turned on the news. But that said, again, I think I got it, and I think I got what so many Americans got. It was interesting when we were even doing our own internal polling, and we were, large sample sizes. We would do a digital poll, and we would do a telephone poll, fairly traditional stuff. But again, huge sample sizes. So statistics would dictate that you get within basis points of each other. And we noticed our online polling was 15% better across the board than our telephone polling. And we started saying, wait a minute, how could that possibly be? But ultimately, there was this narrative created. People, they wanted Trump digitally when they were at a computer, when they were going to be all by themselves, just like they would be in a voting booth. So they were okay. So we started asking the people on the telephone who were underperforming by 15%, okay, you're writing in Bernie. you're writing in Jill Stein. Who's your neighbor voting for? Oh, that guy's voting for Trump. Meaning, people were willing to say your neighbor, someone who's likely to be fairly similar to you, that guy's voting for Trump, but they weren't necessarily willing to tell someone on the phone because they didn't want to hear the lecture of, if you like him, if you believe in some of the things that he's saying, you're one of the ists. You're this, that, the other. And so they weren't willing to engage in that. And the second we started asking that question, the two pollings just started lining up right away. So I always joked, there were wives that voted for Trump that didn't tell their husbands and husbands that didn't tell their wives because people didn't want to engage in sort of that visceral argument. It's unfortunate that it became that way, but it is a very binary system these days.
I will take forward the point about the laws and why is there such an acrimonious relationship and is there any effort to fix it back in the US? But I will ask you this question. When did it dawn upon the family, when did it dawn upon you particularly, that your father was the 45th president of the United States?
Honestly, it took me a while. The one thing I'll say, business has highs and lows, but the frequency and the cycle is drawn out, right? You can miss a day, things change, but it's usually, other than, very set times. For politics, what I found it was 5 minutes up, 10 minutes down, 15 minutes up, 20 minutes down. It's such a tight cycle. The emotional upswings and downswings are so intense and so critical. Frankly, it was, totally fascinating. At the same time, it beats you down. And over a 2-year period, as vicious as it got, even when we won, or were told that night, it was like, wait a minute, what's the catch? You become so cynical. It's terrible as a human. You don't want to necessarily actually even think that way, but you become so cynical that it was interesting when John Podesta got back on stage and said, well, let's talk tomorrow. I was like, I knew it. I was happier that I was right about my cynicism than the fact that we had won, and that's frankly terrible. But that is what, again, the emotional uptake did for you. What it really hit me was the day before the inauguration, so about 2.5 months later. I mean, that's borderline crazy as well, right? But 2.5 months later, pulling into Arlington National Cemetery for the wreath-laying ceremony, it just it was a serene moment, and it all sort of hit in. And it was, again, sort of an uncharacteristically, for me at least, emotional moment where it was like, wow, there was a lot of responsibility to bear here.
And this is really happening. But before I go on to how life has changed and how things have changed, I'm keen to ask you a question about the presidency. It hasn't been an easy presidency to begin with. He's been under attack. A lot has been written and said. He has an acrimonious relationship with the media. How has that impacted the family? And how do you believe, is there any attempt at all to fix that relationship?
Well, listen, at this point, I don't know that there's any fixing. I mean, again, I'm here as a businessman. I'm here, not representing anyone. I'm here, and I've been coming to India for over a decade, so I understand the market, I understand the mindset. It has been difficult, obviously. I mean, you sort of wake up, you see the sort of the viciousness that become, the sort of binary, you're either one way or the other. And that's interesting for me. I mean, I live in New York City. I joke that it's the People's Republic of New York because the mentality and the politics there are very different than elsewhere in the country. But, I still have friends from there. And guess what? Our political ideologies may be totally different, but we're still friends. We still have lunches and dinners, and we still hang out. And we can do that, but there has been sort of a wedge driven between a lot of people where if you are actually, and I don't think we live in a totally binary world that way, so hopefully some of that goes. From a family standpoint, that's obviously difficult at times.
But you're a liberal, you have business interests in India, in China, in other parts of the world. As a businessman, you obviously would want lower barriers. You wouldn't want any barriers at all. And back home, obviously, America is looking inwards increasingly for reasons that you have justified, for reasons which the president has justified. What are conversations at home like?
Well, again, I think these days I see him so little that we don't actually talk politics. I used to be able to go in. It's not worth it. I get enough of it every other minute of the day just watching from the sidelines. So, frankly, we see him so little that when we're together, it's really about being a family because, that's sort of an aspect of our frankly, our lives that was such a big part. I mean, our offices were always next door. We were there. Now, when I think, hey, why don't I call him just to say hi? I think about the stuff that he's dealing with on a daily basis. When something goes on, in a country far, far away, and I don't even want to bother him. I feel it's almost trite to call him and just to say hello. Does that make any sense? It probably doesn't, but from my perspective, it does. So when I get to see him in the few short time I do, it's really about just sort of being together as a family unit.
And you're not talking politics or business at this time. But how has life changed for you and for your other siblings, for your kids maybe, to be constantly trailed by Secret Service? They're doing a phenomenal job.
They do.
But, to be in Delhi, to be in New York, to have security follow you all the time, that must be tough.
Oh, listen, those guys do an amazing job, and they're just, great people. And so, I thank them for that. For me, it's different. I'm a 40-year-old guy, right? I've sort of been set in my ways my whole life. I've been reasonably pretty independent. I'm a big outdoorsman. I'm used to going camping and disappearing in the woods on weekends and doing those kind of things. So, it's certainly a change, but we've also had, our own fair share of scares, certainly even in the last 2 weeks. I won't get into the details of that, but it's, you realize that, the world isn't the rose-colored glasses world that we'd love to be able to live in at all times, and so you do have to take those precautions.
So let's turn focus and let's talk about India. This isn't the first time you've been here. You've done business in India for decades, over a decade now. How has India changed in terms of doing business then vis-a-vis now? Because I know you remember relating something in the past. You said the land was promised, and when you came here, it wasn't really available. So
I experienced India. There's two parts of that question. There's what I've seen since I've figured out the system, and then there was figuring out the system. So it's right. I probably don't even have to tell the story, and everyone knows what I'm talking about.
But let's hear it from you.
For those who don't know, when I first came to India, I met a businessman in New York, and he was, had a great line of this, and I have the best piece of land in this market. You got to come see it, and you spend some time, and everything looks good. Then you get there, it's like, okay, well, let's talk business. Well, it's not really my land.
Who does the land
It's my cousin's land. Well, it's not really my cousin's land. It's my friends, uncles, dogs, walkers, owners. But now that you're here, let's talk business. I'm sitting there being like, I just traveled 18 hours for this. This is, but sometimes, I have found that, sometimes learning the hard way makes you appreciate once you figured it out that much better, makes you probably more adverse to making other mistakes. And so, now with the partnerships that I've been able to strike up, again, over 10 years. This is not something that I started doing last week, and I'm here because I like India.
Sure.
It was something that I learned through the School of Hard Knocks. I saw the people, I saw the energy, I saw what was going on. I said, there's got to be something here. And so I was a bull on the market a long time ago. Now, because of this, we're saying we can't do new deals, understandably. So I have to take a little bit of a back seat, but that's difficult because I feel so good about the market. I feel so good about the partnerships that I have that, I could be doing 10x because I've gone through it. I've understood it, and now I get it.
I'm going to ask you a bit of a tricky question, a bit of an uncomfortable question perhaps for this audience. When you say that you take an 18-hour flight, you come here and realize the land actually doesn't belong to the gentleman or to his cousin or to his cousin's cousin either. Are Indian businessmen, this is a constant complaint, are some sections of Indian industry willing to bend rules when it suits them?
Well, listen, I think there's an entrepreneurial spirit here that is, Again, it needs no further explanation, though the media will say that I said something totally different. But so there's an entrepreneurial spirit here, that is different than elsewhere in the world. But I have seen, the second part of perhaps the last question was, I have seen changes come. Once I got with the right people and understood, I have seen reforms. I'm not talking policy, I'm saying as an outside businessman coming in over the couple of years, I have seen changes. Some of the reforms probably hit everyone, but they also weeded out in the real estate sector, which was, if you were a developer, it was a 4-letter word. Okay, there was no trust because you were promised X and you were delivered X minus, if anything at all. And that doesn't work in the long term. So I think there's been a burden imposed on all developers, the ones who have done a good job, the ones who are well-intentioned, the ones that I'm now truly friends with, they've done a good job and they'll rise to the top anyway. It will weed out the bad players, and that needed to happen.
We'll talk about weeding out the bad players and the reforms that have been undertaken and how that's really changing real estate. But you've got business interests both in India and China. And just for this audience here, actually, India is the biggest market for you outside of the United States.
Yeah, we don't have China. Actually, our focus, and my focus has really been in India because I've been able to break through there. I think there's an ease of communication here. Whether there's a language barrier, at least in the business level, where there is no difficulty. I think there's an understanding of sort of common law. A lot of things made it for me much more natural to be able to do business here. And I think, again, when I talk business, I'm in a relationship business. For me, I'd like to be able to work out a deal and never look at that contract again because we're on the same page. We have the same mindset. We want to build, in this case, luxury. When we're building luxury in India, I'd seen it, and I've seen it all over the emerging world where everything is luxury because I can get it double the premium. Well, just because you call it luxury doesn't make it so. And so I think what we've been able to do is actually truly harness luxury, bring it here, take a building and develop it here that you could sit in any cosmopolitan city in the world. And that, frankly, hasn't existed in the emerging world until very recently, and still very few people do it well, despite what they bill it.
Will you say that a Trump Tower somewhere in Mumbai or Pune or anywhere else can actually be handpicked and taken to Manhattan? Is that what luxury will mean?
I think 100%. When I look at the building that were delivered yesterday in Pune, for example, I mean it's a building that you could sit in any cosmopolitan city in the world, and it would be on par with the best of the best. I mean, it's truly, but it's also an anomaly within that market, which has allowed us to do better with that product than others.
Fair point. Quick question on real estate, and you yourself said you don't want to get into the details and policy framework, but whether it's the GST or whether it was demonetization before that, these things have really led to the cleanup of the sector, but it has also led to a lot of asset price correction in this
Correct.
sector. You're in the luxury business. You're looking for down payments of $40,000 for a Trump property. For a real estate market that's fairly battered, how has business grown?
Again, because we're able to differentiate by actually delivering ultra-luxury. And again, this is now a market that's mature in many respects in that our buyers are traveling around the world. Okay? Before it was as global, before they traveled as much, you could say, hey, this is the best of the best. Well, now that they have flats in New York, Paris, London, they know that, and it was difficult for them. We always said it's sort of starved for luxury. They experienced it, they know what it is, but they couldn't get it in their home market. And so, being able to actually deliver that kind of product here has made a big difference.
Okay, a quick question, and this is, I'm purely asking this question to you as a businessman, as somebody who's run a successful business. When we talk about a Make in America or making America great again, what does this really mean for global trade? What does this mean for businessmen looking to, take their business globally? What does this really mean to the new globalization that was spoken about here?
So I don't think that the concepts are mutually exclusive. I mean, I think you can look after your own country and everyone can benefit. I think if I look at some of the numbers that have come out of the various central banks with the concept of tax reform coming in, other countries have actually benefited with that. I just think you also can't, be in a system where you've left behind a very large section of the country, basically everywhere between New York City and Malibu. It doesn't work. And so you have to be able to take care of all of those things, and that doesn't mean that you can't still thrive and work in a global workforce. And that's just me as a businessman.
Would you say that the quintessential American dream where merit will survive and will thrive despite all odds is still very intact? Because a lot of people in this room would beg to differ.
I think 100%. I mean, I think that's what everyone's been advocating for, is a merit-based system.
Okay, let me ask you two quick last closing questions. One of them has to be on your relationship with Ivanka Trump. She was here for the Entrepreneur Summit. Again, a very visible face of the Trump presidency as an advisor. What's your relationship with your very famous sibling like?
It's been great. I mean, we've always had a very close relationship growing up. Again, now that she's in D.C., with a hectic schedule of her own, we don't get to see each other as much. But, growing up together, I think we always, whether it be some of the adversity with, sort of a rough and vocal, divorce with our parents, I think we've always had a very close and tight sibling, unit. And so, and it's the same with, frankly, my brother. And so, him and I are now running the organization and focusing on those business. But, family has always meant a lot to us, as it does for our children and everyone around us.
All right, a quick last question. If you were in a room with Barack Obama today, what would the conversation be like? What would the two people be talking about?
Well, listen, I think similar to the conversation that we had earlier, it's like, I live in a place where I'm one of the few people that are conservative in that market. And so, I think it could be fine. I think I'd love to see more actual open discourse rather than sort of the binary nature of our politics where you can't even possibly say that. Or, we have freedom of speech as long as I agree with everything you're saying, in which case if I don't, we no longer have it. So, and I've seen that. I've seen that in the media. I saw it, for example, I did an interview the other day.
That's right.
And we were talking here, and we had this incredible conversation. They asked me, Don, you've traveled all over the emerging world. You've experienced it. What separates India from the rest of the world in the emerging world? And I said, well, I gave this long, sort of uncharacteristically sort of emotional answer, for me at least, right? So I said, listen, the spirit of the people here is really unique. There's a happiness that goes, and I gave every disclaimer language possible. I said, and I don't mean to be glib, and I fully understand the hardship that's there, but there is a spirit, there is a joy, there is sort of a smile on your face that you see here that you don't see anywhere else. And I don't know if it's a nationalistic pride, whatever it is. And so I have
just a happy bunch of people.
Happy bunch, and everyone knew what I was talking about. And the Washington, great, but it gets better. So this was like, I really meant it. And again, it wasn't me coming here for the first time. It's me coming here after 10 years. So I give this response. Everyone gets it. And I read the Washington Post the next day. Donald Trump Jr. likes poor people because they smile. I'm not joking. I actually ran into the reporter that did the interview with me yesterday at a cocktail party on something else, and she goes, I can't believe they did that to you. You didn't even say it. I go, welcome to my life. So I am the first person in the history of India to say, I love the Indian media. They are so mild and nice. A big round of applause for everybody who likes to get up. You know, because they're, at least, everyone understands that joke too. Because as aggressive and as brutal as they can be, they've at least been fair.
All right, a quick last question before we close this, because we have to prepare for the Prime Minister's arrival. You've been here on business trips before. This is different because you can't be inking business deals. You're just perhaps going to look at business that's ongoing. You can't be inking new projects.
Correct.
How different has this trip treated you?
Well, listen, it's been great because we have various projects in various phases. And, you know, again, for me, the partnerships that we've struck here have really turned into friendships. So it's great to be able to see that. It's great to be able to see, you know, we are builders. That's what we do. So to see that creation process take place, to, you know, see the sort of way we've been able to get in markets and do so well and just been well received, you know, that's been incredible for me because it's sort of the, you know, end of 10 years of hard work to get there. So that's rather unfortunate. I say, wait a second, this should be the time where I'd be able to capitalize, and that's a sacrifice we're willing to make, and we have made it, you know, voluntarily so. But, you know, it is a big sacrifice because a big part of my life to say, hey, I'm going to take 8 years. I'm 40. Let's call it 23% of my life, and just we're not going to do anything. We're not. It is difficult and it's tough as a businessman, but again, fully understandable. And because of the fact that we've been here, because of the fact that we know the people here, I think when we're ready to get back into the market in time, when we're out of politics, you know, I think we'll get some credit for it and we'll be welcomed again with open arms.
So in 30 seconds then, you said you would have liked to have a conversation with Barack Obama, which wasn't binary. Have you had a conversation with him?
I haven't. I shook his hand at the inauguration. Seems like a fine man, but I don't know him well enough to let you know.
All right. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump Jr.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Donald Trump Jr., for that fireside chat right here with us. The quintessential way of doing business in India, and you've heard it from a view that really counts. It's minutes before our chief guest and the keynote speaker, the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives. I request the audience to help us prepare for this arrival. This is a mandatory security break for about roughly under 10 minutes, and I request all of you to kindly remain seated. This is a mandatory security break. At this stage, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to plenty of dignitaries who've joined us while those sessions were on. The Minister of State, Mr. Jitendra Singh is right here. So is Colonel Rajyavardhan Rathore, Minister of State for INB, and of course, Minister for Sports. I also see plenty of bureaucrats in this audience, some of the most important secretaries in the government of India. The ones that I can see right before me, I thought Amitabh Kant. Mr. Amitabh Kant is right here, Mr. Ramesh Abhishek, Ms. Aruna Sundarajan, so is Mr. Subhash Garg. I was told Mr. Neeraj Gupta is also in the audience. So I really will request the audience to be patient and to be seated as we prepare for the Prime Minister's arrival. And of course, there's the one and only Shah Rukh Khan in the audience as well. I will request all of you standing at the back to please find yourselves a seat. You will not be allowed to stand near the doors or any other place when the Prime Minister arrives. I request each one of you to find yourselves a seat. and gentlemen, this really is a mandatory security break. I will have you request all of you to kindly take your seats. In another 5 minutes. I request each one of you to please take your seats. And everybody who's gathered right here, kindly take your positions and your seats. You will not be allowed to stand here. There's still photographers. Kindly move back towards the hall. I really need all of you to be seated for the Prime Minister's arrival. Right here in the front rows, please. I do understand the frenzy and euphoria with Shah Rukh Khan in the house, but I'll request each one of you to kindly take your positions and your seats. We cannot have people standing right here in the first row as the Prime Minister is all set to arrive. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The Honorable Prime Minister has arrived at the hotel. I'd like to request Mr. Vineet Jain, MD, The Times Group, to take his position on the stage. Gentlemen, I request each one of you to kindly rise and put your hands together and join us in extending a very, very warm welcome to the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi. We are delighted to have you amidst us, sir, and we are eagerly looking forward to your address on how India is preparing for the future. Kindly take your seats. May I now please request Mr. Vineet Jain, MD, The Times Group, to share a few words and welcome our chief guest and the keynote speaker of the Economic Times Global Business Summit 2018, the Honorable Prime Minister of India.
Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, ministers, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Economic Times, welcome to the inaugural session of the Global Business Summit. This is the 4th edition of ETGBS, bringing together global and Indian CEOs, economists, and thought leaders from around the world. To a significant extent, the world economy is in a better place than it has been for years. The world's largest economies are all growing together. The rate of growth is the fastest since the Great Recession a decade ago. World trade, which had been shrinking for some years, is growing again. Yet, there is a paradox. For it is fair to say that globalization has taken a few knocks since the first GBS in 2015. Protectionism is on the rise around the world, particularly in the richer economies. Long-established trade treaties are being questioned. Why is this tide turning? It could be because large sections of the population in those countries believe they have not benefited from globalization. In India, too, there is a vigorous debate on many aspects of globalization. We need foreign capital, we need competition, and our consumers have a right to demand the best the world has to offer. At the same time, our domestic industry must be nurtured. Some point to the Chinese model of encouraging homegrown multinationals. How do we create our own world beaters without becoming inward-looking? The challenge for our policymakers will be to strike a delicate balance. The fact that every significant global company wants a piece of a resurgent India is now widely accepted. We have moved a few stages beyond that. India now wants its rightful place at the high table in shaping the business and regulatory architecture of tomorrow's world. In Prime Minister Modi, we have the leader and visionary to help us do just that. From Davos to the US to the Middle East, he has championed an India that is open for business. Reforms like the goods and services tax and sustained attempts to improve ease of doing business is a clear message that companies from India and around the world will find an enabling and stable policy regime. The recent budget has been praised by most economists for largely staying away from the temptation of populism, although it's the last full budget before the elections. Macroeconomic numbers have begun to reflect the impact of various structural reforms enacted by the government. GDP growth is poised to accelerate from 6.75% this year to between 7 and 7.5% in 2019. The number of taxpayers, both indirect and direct, has shot up, and so have tax collections. India's credit rating has improved, as has our rank in the Ease of Doing Business survey. By most indicators, the Indian economy is getting more and more globalized, so far without any significant political backlash. India was the largest recipient of greenfield foreign direct investment in 2017. We are also the 7th largest exporter of services in the world. Of course, our share of trade in goods is still very low. Indian financial markets have recently taken a tumble. That also is a consequence of globalization, following the US market crash. But the fall has not been as severe as in other Asian countries. I think the presence here of the CEOs of some of the top global corporations is proof that temporary ups and downs of the market will have little impact on the India story. I would like to end by recalling US President Donald Trump's words in his book, The Art of the Deal. He wrote, "If you're going to be thinking anyway, you might as well think big." So that's the thought that I leave with the policymakers, academics, and business leaders gathered here tonight. We look to you to dream up the really big ideas that will enlighten us on the way forward. The deliberations this evening and tomorrow at the Economic Times Global Business Summit will be a great start on that journey. May I now invite Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji to address us all. Thank you.
इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स ग्लोबल बिजनेस समिट में देश विदेश से आए हुए सभी मेहमान, यहाँ उपस्थित सभी महानुभाव, देवियों और सज्जनों, मैं सबसे पहले आपसे क्षमा मांगता हूँ क्योंकि मुझे आने में कुछ मिनट विलंब हो गया, आपको इंतज़ार करना पड़ा, इसके लिए मैं क्षमा प्रार्थी हूँ। न्यू इंडिया के संकल्प के इस बहुत महत्वपूर्ण कालखंड में आप सभी न्यू इकोनॉमी, न्यू रूल्स पर मंथन करने के लिए यहाँ जुटे हुए हैं। सवाल ये कि ये नया क्या है? इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स भी डेली छपता है, पेपर की क्वालिटी भी रोज वही होती है, प्रिंटिंग क्वालिटी भी रोज वही होती है, बैनर पर आप जो लोग जो अखबार का नाम लिखते हैं उसका फॉन्ट और स्टाइल सब वही होता है। फिर भी हम कहते हैं हर रोज नया अखबार निकलता है।
और फर्क होता है अखबार के कंटेंट का। और इसी कंटेंट के आधार पर आप लोग कहते हैं ये ताजा खबर है, ये नई खबर है। साथियों, अगले कुछ महीनों में हमारी सरकार 4 वर्ष पूरे करने जा रही है। देश वही है, लोग वही है, ब्यूरोक्रेसी वही है, लेकिन फिर भी एक बदलाव देश विदेश में स्पष्ट नजर आ रहा है। देश के आर्थिक और सामाजिक कंटेंट में आए इस बदलाव में ही न्यू इंडिया, न्यू इकोनॉमी के न्यू रूल्स निहित है। आपको ध्यान होगा 4 साल पहले पूरी दुनिया में जब भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था की चर्चा होती थी तो कहा जाता था फ्रेजाइल 5। दुनिया हम पर हंसती थी और हंस करके कहती थी कि ये खुद भी डूबेगा और हमें भी डुबो देगा। वो दिन थे। आज फ्रेजाइल 5 की नहीं, भारत के $5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी के लक्ष्य की चर्चा हो रही है। अब दुनिया भारत के साथ कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर के चलना चाहती है। साथियों, भारत का विकास पूरे विश्व के विकास में महत्वपूर्ण योगदान दे रहा है। पिछले 3-4 वर्षों में भारत ने अपने साथ ही पूरी दुनिया की इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ को मजबूती दी है। वर्ल्ड जीडीपी में अगर हम नॉमिनल टर्म में डेटा को देखें तो बड़े रोचक तथ्य सामने आ रहे हैं। इंटरनेशनल मॉनेटरी फंड IMF के आंकड़ों के अनुसार 2013 के अंत में भारत का वर्ल्ड जीडीपी में नॉमिनल टर्म में कंट्रीब्यूशन 2.4% था। हमारी सरकार के लगभग 4 वर्षों में ये बढ़कर 3.1% हो गया है। आंकड़ा छोटा लगता ना, इसलिए देर लगी, लेकिन ये बहुत बड़ा जंप है। विश्व अर्थव्यवस्था का जो हिस्सा पाने में अब समझ आएगा। जिस अर्थव्यवस्था को पाने में 8 साल लगे थे, वो हमारी सरकार ने 4 साल में करके दिखाया है। इससे भी बड़ा चौंकाने वाला तथ्य IMF के डेटा से निकल करके आता है कि वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमी में नॉमिनल टर्म में जो पिछले 4 वर्षों में वृद्धि हुई है उसका 21% भारत में हुई वृद्धि के कारण है। अब आप खुद अनुमान लगा सकते हैं कि एक देश जो वर्ल्ड जीडीपी का केवल 3% है, वो 7 गुना ज्यादा वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमी की ग्रोथ में कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है। आज आप कोई भी मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक पैरामीटर देख लीजिए, चाहे वो इन्फ्लेशन हो, करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट हो, फिस्कल डेफिसिट हो, जीडीपी ग्रोथ हो, इंटरेस्ट रेट हो, एफडीआई इनफ्लो हो, भारत सभी में बेहतरीन परफॉर्म कर रहा है। देश का करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट जो 4% के अलार्मिंग स्तर पर था, उसे कम करके हमारी सरकार पहले 3-3.5 वर्षों में औसतन 4% से 1% पर हम ले आए हैं। पहले की सरकार के समय फिस्कल डेफिसिट 4.5% के आसपास था, उसे हमारी सरकार कम करके 3.5% तक ले आई है। हमारी सरकार के 3.5 साल में लगभग $209 बिलियन ग्रॉस एफडीआई आया है, जबकि पिछली सरकार के 3 साल में $117 बिलियन एफडीआई आया था। आज देश का फॉरेन एक्सचेंज रिजर्व लगभग $300 बिलियन से बढ़ करके $419 बिलियन के स्तर पर पहुंचा है। बावजूद इसके कि 2013 के संकट के दौरान किए गए स्पेशल फॉरेन करेंसी नॉन रेजिडेंट डिपॉजिट यानी FCNR के लगभग $24 बिलियन का रिपेमेंट भी देश पूरा कर चुका है। इन्फ्लेशन रेट नियंत्रित रखने और हाई प्रोडक्टिविटी ग्रोथ की वजह से रुपए का आउटलुक भी बेहतर बना हुआ है। ब्याज दर में 1% से ज्यादा की कमी का लाभ ग्राहकों, हाउसिंग सेक्टर और अन्य उद्योगों को हो रहा है। साल दर साल हमारी सरकार सारे मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक इंडिकेटर्स को सुधारने में सफल रही है। हम हर बार उसको इंप्रूव करते गए हैं। लेकिन क्या पुराने तौर तरीकों से ये संभव था? तो जवाब ना में है। पुरानी अप्रोच पर चलते हुए ये बदलाव असंभव था। देश में ये बदलाव इसलिए आया है क्योंकि देश अब एक नए वर्क कल्चर के साथ आगे बढ़ रहा है। अपने सामर्थ्य, अपने संसाधन पर भरोसा करके न्यू इंडिया के संकल्प के साथ आगे बढ़ रहा है। पिछले 3 वर्ष में देश के इकोनॉमिक वर्ल्ड ने एक नई चीज सीखी है और वो है कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस। जब आगे बढ़ने की होड़ नहीं होगी, जब एक हेल्दी कंपटीशन नहीं होगा, तो फिर न स्पीड आएगी और न ही ऊंचे हॉरिजॉन्स पर जाकर के हम सोच पाएंगे। साथियों, आज भारत की इस कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस, इसको पूरी दुनिया वैलिडेट कर रही है, सैल्यूट कर रही है। UNCTAD की वर्ल्ड इन्वेस्टमेंट रिपोर्ट कहती है कि भारत दुनिया के फेवराइट एफडीआई डेस्टिनेशंस में एक है। दुनिया की टॉप 3 प्रोस्पेक्टिव होस्ट इकोनॉमीज में भी भारत का नाम है। एफडीआई कॉन्फिडेंस इंडेक्स में भारत टॉप 2 इमर्जिंग परफॉर्मर्स के रूप में उसका नाम है। वर्ल्ड बैंक की ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस की रैंकिंग में हमने सिर्फ 3 साल में 42 अंकों का सुधार किया है। आज हम 142 से 100वें नंबर पर पहुंच चुके हैं। तमाम रेटिंग एजेंसियां भी भारत की रेटिंग में सुधार कर रही है। भारत अब दुनिया की सबसे ओपन इकोनॉमीज में से एक है। साथियों, जब मैं पिछली बार आपके इस कार्यक्रम में आया था तो उस समय जीएसटी सिर्फ संभावनाओं में था। आज जीएसटी एक सच्चाई है। स्वतंत्रता के बाद देश के सबसे बड़े टैक्स रिफॉर्म को लागू हुए भी 7 महीना होने को है। जीएसटी ने देश को एक बेहतर टैक्स कंप्लायंस सिस्टम, बेहतर रेवेन्यू सिस्टम दिया है। इसने गुड्स के फास्टर मूवमेंट को बढ़ावा दिया है, ट्रांसपोर्ट कॉस्ट कम की है और एक्सपोर्ट में कॉम्पिटिटिवनेस का माहौल बनाया है। फ्रेंड्स, हमारे देश में 70 साल के इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स सिस्टम के बावजूद लगभग 60 लाख व्यापारी ही, आपके लिए कह रहा हूं, कभी कभी कुछ लोगों को लगता है कि किसी और के लिए होगा तो आपकी और आपकी बिरादरी के लिए कह रहा हूं। सिर्फ इतना बड़ा देश, 1.3 बिलियन पॉपुलेशन, सिर्फ 60 लाख व्यापारी ही ऐसे थे जो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स रिजिम के दायरे में थे। ओनली 60 लाख। जीएसटी के सिर्फ 7 महीनों में ये आंकड़ा करीब करीब 1 करोड़ को पार कर गया है। इससे देश में ईमानदार बिजनेस कल्चर को बल तो मिला ही है, टैक्स नेट के इस विस्तार की वजह से ईमानदार टैक्स पेयर को कम टैक्स का रिवॉर्ड भी मिला है। साथियों, यह आपकी जानकारी में रहा है कि हमारी सरकार को ट्विन बैलेंस शीट की किस तरह की लीगेसी मिली है। बैंकों की पहले की व्यवस्था से तो आप अवगत ही है कि किस तरह से क्रॉनी कैपिटलिज्म का वातावरण व्यापक रूप से सिस्टम को इंट्रैच था। इसे सुधारने के लिए इंसॉल्वेंसी और बैंक्रप्सी कोड जैसा बड़ा रिफॉर्म भी हमारी सरकार ने किया। आज देश में 2000 से ज्यादा इंसॉल्वेंसी प्रोफेशनल्स और 62 इंसॉल्वेंसी एंटिटीज 24 घंटे इस समस्या को दूर करने में जुटी हुई है। सिर्फ 3 महीने में हमारी सरकार 2700 से ज्यादा केसों को सुलझा चुकी है। एक और चुनौती भरा विषय था एक्सपोर्ट का। अगर हम साल 2014-16 के इंपोर्ट एंड एक्सपोर्ट के डेटा अगर उसको देखें तो पाएंगे कि दोनों में ही करीब करीब 15% की गिरावट आई। ये गिरावट क्यों आई? इस पर कई तरह की राह लोगों ने बताई। एक संभावना और है जिस पर अर्थनीति के जानकारों को मंथन करना चाहिए। साथियों, 2014 में सरकार बनने के बाद काले धन के खिलाफ लड़ाई के लिए हमारी सरकार का पहला बड़ा फैसला था एसआईटी के गठन का। एसआईटी ने अपनी रिपोर्ट में कहा था कि इंपोर्ट्स एक्सपोर्ट्स में ओवर इनवॉइसिंग की भी बहुत गंभीर समस्या है। इस रिपोर्ट से मिली जानकारी के बाद सरकार ने ओवर इनवॉइसिंग से निपटने के लिए सख्त कदम उठाए। अब ये इकोनॉमिस्ट के लिए और मैं नम्रतापूर्वक कहता हूं, अभी इकोनॉमिक्स के लिए स्टडी का सब्जेक्ट है कि बिना ट्रेड डेफिसिट में बड़े बदलाव हुए आखिर क्यों इंपोर्ट्स एक्सपोर्ट्स में एक ही तरह की गिरावट आ रही थी। क्या इसके पीछे वजह ओवर इनवॉइसिंग थी, बेस करेक्शन था? विनीत जी, अब कल को ये मत छापना कि एक्सपोर्ट यूनियन पर मोदी ने दी सफाई। मैं एक एंगल आपके सामने रख रहा हूं जिस पर आप सभी को सोचना चाहिए। वैसे आपकी जानकारी ये भी होगी कि सख्ती के लंबे दौर के बाद अब एक्सपोर्ट के हाल के आंकड़े बता रहे हैं कि स्थिति तेजी से सुधर रही है। साथियों, अपने हम रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में देखते हैं कि जब पानी को उबालने के लिए रखते हैं तो एक खास टेम्परेचर पहुंचने के बाद ही स्टीम में ट्रांसफॉर्म होता है। उस तापमान पर पहुंचने से पहले न पानी उबलता है और न स्टीम बनती है। इसी तरह से सरकार के इनिशिएटिव्स लोगों तक पहुंचे, इसके लिए स्पीड, स्केल और सेंसिटिविटी की आवश्यकता होती है। जब स्पीड, स्केल, सेंसिटिविटी के साथ काम होता है तो सक्सेस अनिवार्य रूप से मिलती है। हमारी सरकार ने अटकाने, भटकाने, लटकाने वाला पहले का कल्चर खत्म कर दिया है। इसकी वजह से पूरे सिस्टम में एक नई चेतना आई है, एक नई तेजी आई है। पहले की सरकार में जिस स्पीड से रेलवे लाइनों का ब्रॉडगेज में बदला जा रहा था, आज उससे 2 गुनी रफ्तार से रेल लाइनों को ब्रॉडगेज में बदला जा रहा है। आप ग्राफिक देखते होंगे, मैं साथ आज आपकी सुविधा के लिए ले आया हूं क्योंकि बहुत सी चीजें को रजिस्टर करने को तैयार नहीं है जी। बहुत सी बातें इकोनॉमिक टाइम्स में पढ़ने को नहीं मिलेगी। पहले की सरकार में जिस रफ्तार से गांव में सड़क बन रही थी, नेशनल हाईवे बन रहे थे, अब इस सरकार में वही काम उससे 2 गुनी रफ्तार से हो रहा है। पहले की सरकार में जिस स्पीड से पावर ट्रांसमिशन लाइन बिछाई जा रही थी, आज यही काम उससे 2 गुनी रफ्तार से हो रहा है। पहले की सरकार में जिस पद से इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जनरेशन कैपेसिटी जोड़ी गई थी, आज उससे ज्यादा तेजी से उस काम को हम आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं। पहले की सरकार में 3 साल की मेहनत के बाद, अरे बड़ी गंभीरता से सुनिए, 3 साल की मेहनत के बाद जहां सिर्फ 59 पंचायतों को ऑप्टिकल फाइबर से जोड़ा गया था, वहां हमने भी सिर्फ 3 साल में ही 1,10,000 से ज्यादा ग्राम पंचायतों को ऑप्टिकल फाइबर से जोड़ा है। डायरेक्ट बेनिफिट ट्रांसफर के तहत पहले सिर्फ 28 योजनाओं की राशि बैंक में सीधी ट्रांसफर की जाती थी, अब 400 से ज्यादा योजनाएं डीबीटी से जुड़ गई है। आप सोचिए, एक छोटा सा एलईडी बल्ब पहले 350 रुपये में मिला करता था, उसे कम करते करते हम 40-50 रुपये पर ले आए हैं। दुनिया के कई देशों में आज भी ये एलईडी $3 तक मिल रहा है, लेकिन हमारी सरकार इसकी कीमत को $1 से भी कम तक ले आई है। 2014 से पहले हमारे देश में जहां सिर्फ 3 मोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंपनियां थी, याद रहेगा ना, हमारी सरकार बनने के बाद अब इनकी संख्या बढ़कर के 120 के आसपास पहुंच गई है। कहां 3 कंपनियां, कहां 120। इसी का परिणाम है कि जहां साल 2014-15 में देश में 50,000 करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा के मोबाइल का इंपोर्ट किया जाता था, वहीं अब ये घटकर आधा रह गया है। क्या ये परिवर्तन ऐसे ही आ गया? क्या ये बदलाव ऐसे ही आ गया? इसके लिए जिस इच्छा शक्ति की जरूरत होती है वो हमारी सरकार ने दिखाई है। यही न्यू इकोनॉमी के न्यू रूल्स हैं। भाइयों और बहनों, 2014 में सरकार बनाने के बाद से हमने ऑप्टिमम यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज, रिसोर्स आधारित डेवलपमेंट पॉलिसीज और डेवलपमेंट पॉलिसीज आधारित बजट पर जोर दिया है। आज देश में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर, एग्रीकल्चर पर, टेक्नोलॉजी पर, हेल्थ सेक्टर पर, एजुकेशन सेक्टर पर जितना निवेश किया जा रहा है उतना पहले कभी नहीं हुआ है। पहली बार देश में एविएशन पॉलिसी बनी है। एविएशन सेक्टर में इसके अच्छे परिणाम दिख रहे हैं। आज हमारे देश में प्राइवेट या पब्लिक टोटल 450 एयरक्राफ्ट ऑपरेशनल है। इस एक वर्ष में हिंदुस्तान से 900 नए एयरक्राफ्ट का ऑर्डर बुक हुआ है। आप कल्पना कर सकते हैं कितना बड़ा तेजी से ग्रोथ हो रहा है। जिस डिफेंस सेक्टर में कोई एफडीआई के बारे में सोच नहीं सकता था, उसमें भी हमारी सरकार ने निवेश की नई संभावनाएं पैदा की है। हमारी सरकार देश के ट्रांसपोर्ट सेक्टर को 21वीं सदी की आवश्यकताओं को देखते हुए तैयार कर रही है, उन्हें इंटीग्रेट कर रही है। ये सारा निवेश, सरकार की योजनाएं अपने साथ रोजगार के लाखों अवसर लेकर के भी आ रही है। पिछले 4 वर्षों में हमारी सरकार ने देश में जॉब सेंट्रिक के साथ ही पीपल सेंट्रिक ग्रोथ पर भी जोर दिया है। एक ऐसी अर्थव्यवस्था जिसमें देश के गरीबों का फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन भी हो, जो मिडिल क्लास के एस्पिरेशन को भी ध्यान में रखे हैं। साथियों, हमारी सरकार में ये दम नहीं है कि हम ही सब कुछ जानते हैं। सबका साथ सबका विकास के मंत्र पर चलते हुए हम सबकी राय और सबके अनुभव को साथ लेकर के आगे बढ़ने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं। हमारी सरकार पूरी संवेदनशीलता के साथ उनकी आवश्यकताएं, उनकी चिंताएं सुनती है और इसी वजह से अनेक लॉन्ग स्टैंडिंग इश्यूज के इनोवेटिव सॉल्यूशंस आज निकल रहे हैं। पहले दिन से हमारी कोशिश रही है कि सिस्टम में हॉरिजॉन्टली एंड वर्टिकली सेंसिटिविटी परकोलेट किया जाए। मैं खुद अनेक बार किसानों से, नौजवानों से, विद्यार्थियों से, यंग सीईओ से मिलकर के अलग अलग प्लेटफॉर्म पर इंटरेक्शन करता रहा हूं, उनसे जानकारियां लेता रहा हूं, उनके सुझाव लेता रहा हूं। हमने ऐसी व्यवस्था बनाई है जिससे लोगों को फीडबैक हमें सीधे मिलते हैं। ग्रीवेंस रिड्रेसल को भी हमारी सरकार ने बहुत ज्यादा अटेंशन दिया है। साथियों, कई बार जो थियोरेटिकल सॉल्यूशन बहुत परफेक्ट नजर आते हैं वही कई प्रैक्टिकल प्रॉब्लम्स का ओरिजिन बन जाते हैं। इसे तभी समझा जा सकता है जब सरकार संवेदनशीलता के साथ सारी बारीकियों को समझ रही हो। जैसे बांबू पर हाल में लिए फैसला, यूरिया की 100% नीम कोटिंग, ग्रुप सी और ग्रुप डी की नौकरी में इंटरव्यू खत्म करने का फैसला, गैजेटेड ऑफिसर से अटेस्टेड कराने की बाध्यता खत्म करने का फैसला, ये कार्य पहले भी किए जा सकते थे, लेकिन सेंसिटिविटी की कमी ने, जनता से कनेक्ट की कमी ने ऐसा नहीं होने दिया। साथियों, हमारे यहां हेल्थ एक ऐसा सेक्टर रहा है जो होलिस्टिक अटेंशन से दूर रहा। हेल्थ से जुड़ी योजनाएं पहले भी बनी, लेकिन उनमें भी सेंसिटिविटी की कमी रही। हम गुड हेल्थ केयर के साथ साथ गुड हेल्थ को भी इंश्योर कर सकते हैं। मिशन इंद्रधनुष की वजह से देश में टीकाकरण का दायरा बढ़ने की रफ्तार 6 गुना बढ़ी है। 3000 से ज्यादा जन औषधि स्टोर्स पर 800 से ज्यादा दवाइयों को कम कीमत पर दिया जा रहा है। हमारी सरकार ने स्टेंट की कीमत 80% तक कम की है। नी इम्प्लांट की कीमत को नियंत्रित किया है। किडनी के लगभग 2.5 लाख डायलिसिस सेशंस, 2.5 लाख मरीजों को करीब 25 लाख डायलिसिस सेशंस मुफ्त में कराए गए हैं। इस बजट में हमने देश के 10 करोड़ गरीब परिवारों को लाभ पहुंचाने वाली हेल्थ एश्योरेंस स्कीम आयुष्मान भारत का ऐलान किया है। इसके तहत हर गरीब परिवार को गंभीर बीमारी के इलाज के लिए साल भर में 5 लाख रुपए तक का हेल्थ एश्योरेंस दिया जाएगा। साथियों, डिजिटल इंडिया मिशन का आधार हमारे समाज को डिजिटली एम्पावर्ड सोसाइटी में बदलना और देश के अर्थतंत्र को नॉलेज इकोनॉमी में बदलना है। 100 करोड़ बैंक अकाउंट, 100 करोड़ आधार कार्ड, 100 करोड़ मोबाइल फोन, इसकी ट्रिनिटी एक ऐसा इकोसिस्टम बनाने वाली है जो पूरी दुनिया में एक अलग व्यवस्था खड़ी करेगी। जैम, जनधन आधार मोबाइल। साथियों, एमएसएमई का इकोसिस्टम हमारी अर्थव्यवस्था की बैकबोन है। इस सेक्टर को मजबूत करने के लिए हम लगातार काम कर रहे हैं। ज्यादा से ज्यादा लघु उद्योगों को फॉर्मल सेक्टर में लाने के लिए हायर क्रेडिट सपोर्ट, कैपिटल और इंटरेस्ट सब्सिडी और इनोवेशन पर हम बल दे रहे हैं, उस पर ध्यान दिया जा रहा है। इसमें फाइनेंशियल टेक्नोलॉजी यानी फिनटेक का भी बहुत महत्वपूर्ण योगदान है। एमएसएमईज को फाइनेंशियल एक्सेस प्रदान करने के लिए, उसके विकास में और तेजी लाने के लिए फिनटेक का इस्तेमाल बढ़ाया जा रहा है। बढ़ता हुआ इसका इस्तेमाल देश की अर्थव्यवस्था को भी मजबूत कर रहा है। साथियों, जब मैं इससे पहले आपके इस आयोजन में आया था तो मैंने हाउसिंग फॉर ऑल, पावर फॉर ऑल, क्लीन कुकिंग फॉर ऑल, हेल्थ फॉर ऑल, इंश्योरेंस फॉर ऑल, इन विषयों की बातें की थी। देश में बीते 3 साल में गरीबों और निम्न मध्यम वर्ग के लिए लगभग 1 करोड़ घरों का निर्माण किया गया है। 4 करोड़ घरों को बिजली से रोशन करने के लिए सौभाग्य योजना शुरू की गई है। उज्ज्वला योजना के तहत 3 करोड़ 40 लाख महिलाओं को मुफ्त गैस कनेक्शन दिया गया है। सिर्फ 90 पैसे प्रतिदिन, एक चाय भी 90 पैसे में नहीं मिलती है। मैं जब बेचता था तब तो मिलती थी। सिर्फ 90 पैसे प्रतिदिन और 1 रुपया महीने के प्रीमियम पर हमारी सरकार ने 18 करोड़ से ज्यादा गरीबों को सुरक्षा कवच दिया गया है। इन बीमा योजना के माध्यम से गरीबों को अब तक 2000 करोड़ रुपयों से ज्यादा की क्लेम राशि ऑलरेडी दे दी है। साथियों, हमारी सरकार की नीतियां, नियुक्तियां, निर्णय, नियत, नियम सभी का एक ही लक्ष्य है, देश का विकास, देश के गरीब का विकास। सबका साथ सबका विकास के मंत्र पर चलते हुए हम गरीबों को एम्पावर करने का काम कर रहे हैं। पिछले 3-3.5 साल में जनधन योजना के तहत देश में 31 करोड़ से ज्यादा गरीबों के बैंक अकाउंट खुले हैं। सिर्फ अकाउंट ही नहीं खुले, इनमें आज लगभग 75,000 करोड़ रुपए जमा है। इस दौरान सरकार ने 6 करोड़ से ज्यादा शौचालय बनवाए हैं। देश में ग्रामीण स्वच्छता का दायरा 2014 के लगभग 40% से बढ़कर के 78% से ज्यादा हो गया है। सरकार ने मुद्रा योजना के तहत 11 करोड़ लोन दिए हैं। इसके तहत 4.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा की राशि बिना बैंक गारंटी देश के नौजवानों को, महिलाओं को दी गई है। इस योजना से देश को लगभग 3 करोड़ नए उद्यमी मिले हैं। अब तक 11 करोड़ से ज्यादा सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड किसानों को बांटे गए हैं। 20 लाख हेक्टेयर से ज्यादा जमीन को माइक्रो इरिगेशन के दायरे में लाया गया है। पर ड्रॉप मोर क्रॉप, इस मिशन को साकार करने का प्रयास हो रहा है। साथियों, इस साल के बजट में न्यू इकोनॉमी से जुड़ा एक और बड़ा फैसला लिया गया है। अधिसूचित फसलों के लिए न्यूनतम समर्थन मूल्य यानी कि एमएसपी, उनकी लागत का कम से कम 1.5 गुना घोषित किया जाएगा। इस लागत में किसान के द्वारा लिए गए दूसरे श्रमिक के परिश्रम का मूल्य, अपने मवेशी, मशीन या किराए पर लिए गए मवेशी या मशीन का खर्च, बीज का मूल्य, सभी तरह की खाद का मूल्य, सिंचाई के ऊपर किया गया खर्च, राज्य सरकार को दिया गया लैंड रेवेन्यू, वर्किंग कैपिटल में ऊपर दिया गया ब्याज, लीज ली गई जमीन के लिए दिया गया किराया और अन्य सारे खर्च शामिल है। इतना ही नहीं, किसान के द्वारा खुद और अपने परिवार के सदस्यों द्वारा दिए गए श्रम के योगदान का भी मूल्य उत्पादन लागत में जोड़ा जाएगा। देश के परिश्रमी किसानों की आय से जुड़ा ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण कदम है। हालांकि कुछ अर्थशास्त्री इससे कीमत बढ़ने का संकेत दे रहे हैं। साथियों, ऐसे अर्थशास्त्रियों को यह भी तो विचार करना चाहिए कि हमारे अन्नदाता, हमारे किसान के प्रति हमारा दायित्व क्या होना चाहिए। मुझे लगता है कि किसानों की आय बढ़ाने से जुड़े हर फैसले का हमें समर्थन करना चाहिए और सरकार के इस प्रयास में आय के स्रोत चिन्हित करें तो निसंकोच अपनी हिस्सेदारी बढ़ानी चाहिए। साथियों, सरकार ने पिछले 3 वर्षों में ईमानदारी को इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज करने का काम किया है। तकनीक के माध्यम से व्यवस्थाओं को पारदर्शी बनाया जा रहा है, लीकेज रोकी जा रही है। डीबीटी के जरिए सरकार ने 57,000 करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा गलत हाथों से जाने से उन रुपयों को बचाया है। 2 लाख से ज्यादा संदिग्ध कंपनियों का रजिस्ट्रेशन भी रद्द किया गया है। इन कंपनियों के डायरेक्टर्स के अकाउंट भी फ्रीज कर दिए गए हैं और इनके किसी और कंपनी में डायरेक्टर बनने पर भी रोक लगा दी गई है। यहां इस अवसर पर मैं देश के उद्योग जगत, हर सेक्टर के लोगों, हर प्रोफेशनल से एक आग्रह करना चाहता हूं। देश की वर्तमान आवश्यकता क्या है, भविष्य की जरूरत क्या है, उस अपने बैक ऑफ द माइंड में हमेशा बना करके रखिए। निर्णय करने से पहले इन चीजों को पहले सोचिए। एक अपील मैं ये भी करना चाहता हूं कि विभिन्न फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस में नियम और नियत यानी एथिक्स बनाए रखने का दायित्व जिन्हें दिया गया है वो पूरी निष्ठा से अपना कर्तव्य निभाएं। विशेषकर जिन्हें निगरानी और मॉनिटरिंग की जिम्मेदारी सौंपी गई है। मैं स्पष्ट करना चाहूंगा कि ये सरकार आर्थिक विषयों से संबंधित अनियमितताओं के विरुद्ध कड़ी कार्रवाई कर रही है, करती रहेगी और करेगी। जनता के पैसे का अनियमित अर्जन इस सिस्टम को स्वीकार नहीं होगा। यदि न्यू इकोनॉमी न्यू रूल का मूल मंत्र है, साथियों यहां न्यू इकोनॉमी की बात हो रही है। मैंने यहां हो रहे अलग अलग सेशंस के बारे में जानकारी ली तो एक विचार मुझे भी आया। ये विचार है देश की अर्थव्यवस्था से बहुत गहराई से जुड़ा हुआ है। मुझे लगता है कि इस तरह के कार्यक्रमों में, और मैं मानता हूं इस पर गहन चिंतन देश में होने का समय आ गया है। इस प्रकार के कार्यक्रमों में लोकसभा और विधानसभा के चुनाव एक साथ कराने पर जो पॉजिटिव इकोनॉमिक इंपैक्ट देश पर पड़ेगा उसकी भी चर्चा होना जरूरी है। ये विषय सिर्फ राजनेताओं का नहीं है, ये विषय सिर्फ सरकार में बैठे हुए लोगों का नहीं है, ये 1.3 बिलियन हिंदुस्तानियों का विषय है, आप सबका विषय है। और इस अनिश्चितता के कारण, लगातार चुनाव के माहौल के कारण मैं देख रहा हूं कि विदेश से भी जो इन्वेस्ट करने आते हैं वो भी सोचते हैं ठहरो यार पहले वहां चुनाव समाप्त होने दो। वे प्रभावित होते हैं, इन्वेस्टमेंट भी इससे प्रभावित होता है। कई देशों में चुनावों का समय, महीना और दिन सब कुछ तय होता है। वहां के देशों में औद्योगिक विकास का इस पर क्या असर पड़ता है, इस पर भी चर्चा की जा सकती है। भारत का आर्थिक विकास, भारत में गुड गवर्नेंस के निरंतर प्रयास, भारत में वैश्विक मानदंडों को पाने वाली नीतियों और कार्यक्रम, विश्व के साथ आर्थिक और व्यापारिक भागीदारी के संबंध में व्यापक सहमति के प्रयास, साइंस, टेक्नोलॉजी, इनोवेशन के केंद्र में सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट को प्राथमिकता, ये सारी बातें पूरे विश्व को समझ आ रही है, भारत की ओर आकर्षित कर रही है। आधुनिक परिवेश, नए ग्लोबल सिनेरियो में भारत फ्रंटलाइन फोर्स बन सकता है। टेक्नोलॉजी के मामले में, इनोवेशन के मामले में दुनिया का नेतृत्व भारत कर सकता है। हम में वो सामर्थ्य है, हमारे पास वो संसाधन है कि हम न्यू इंडिया के सपने को सच कर सकते हैं। आइए अपने समक्ष मौजूद हर चुनौती को अवसर में बदलकर हम न्यू इंडिया का निर्माण करें, अपने संकल्प को सिद्ध करें। एक बार फिर आप सभी को इस आयोजन के लिए बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं। साथ में अपनी बात समाप्त करता हूं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thanks a lot for that inspiring address, Mr. Prime Minister. Sir, you have highlighted the role that Indian industry and stakeholders will have to play to prepare India for the future. At this stage, we'd like to thank you profusely for your participation in the 4th edition of the Global Business Summit. I would also like to, at this stage, thank the Times Group's MD, Mr. Vineet Jain, and all other prominent speakers for a truly memorable evening. I request everybody in this hall to kindly remain seated as the Prime Minister makes his way out. We'd request you all to remain in your seats. Please do not walk up to the Prime Minister. This is a security protocol. Please remain in your seats as the Prime Minister makes his way up. Thank you very much once again, Mr. Prime Minister, sir, for your inspiring address and for putting our plan for preparation in perspective. The doors shall remain shut. This is a security protocol. Everybody else, kindly remain seated in your positions as the Prime Minister makes his way out. Everybody in the hall, kindly remain seated. This is a security protocol. You don't need to leave your seats. You will not be let out at this point in time. Now, with this, of course, we come to an end of day 1 of the Global Business Summit. In a short while from now, you will have to proceed to the lawns for dinner. See you all back tomorrow for another day of exciting and meaningful conversations. Have a great evening ahead, each one of you. I think the security protocols will require you not to leave the hall at this stage.
Yes. एक यस आपकी जिंदगी बदल देता है। हम समझते हैं यस का महत्व। यस बैंक, इंडिया बोले यस।